By choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the
27th
Situation
day of
Room.
October 2020. A very good morning to you and happy new day. This is the first Tuesday of the week, the final Tuesday of the month. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, and Siti Muga is in the house this morning, as is Nduoko. Good morning, Siti.
Siti Muga in the house is well this morning.
Very good.
He's well in the house.
Mashati.
That is me saying thank you.
Oh, okay. The laugh. That's what it is?
That was me saying that's a good shirt you're wearing. See,
well,
we understand one another. Very
Kabisa,
good.
I wouldn't call it a laugh, really. It's a cross between a laugh and I not sure how I should respond to a compliment. That's what it is. Yes. But compliment well received.
You're being shy.
You guys need a minute?
You're feeling left out.
No,
No.
not at all. At all. I'm okay.
May I request you to take
We
back?
love your hair.
May I request you to take back that minute? That minute you wanted to give us.
We're giving it to you.
Take it. Keep it.
We're giving it to you.
Right. Una, good morning, no.
How are you today?
I did, Jerry.
Very good. Love your hair.
Oh, thank you.
There was a comment like that yesterday, actually. Forgot just to read it. Somebody loves your hair.
Someone looked, observed, commented, and the comment was positive.
It was positive.
These are good things.
They
Being
love your
positive is
hair.
good.
Yeah.
It is a good thing.
It is.
Reminded them of Rapunzel. That's
Oh,
what they
wow.
said. Rapunzel, with hair so fine.
Hey, come on.
Come out the window, climb down your vine.
Kuna watu hapa walisoma nursery school.
Lisa?
Na wakafundishwa nursery ra? Rhymes.
Snorri joking something.
Yes. I don't know. Did we come across it? No, I think such a long time ago. My memory may be playing tricks on me because the only one I can
Games.
Well, the only one I can remember is Humpty Dumpty.
Humpty Dumpty was a weird fellow, wasn't he?
Humpty
was an egg.
Humpty Dumpty was a tremendous chap.
It was an egg.
It was an egg. Yeah.
Yes.
For example. Welcome to the show today. We have a lot to discuss. The moment of truth, Uhuru Ruto clash. What is it about the BBI? So it was a lovely event at the Bomas of Kenya yesterday. Launch of the Building Bridges initiative. We will talk about that in a moment. And then we'll also be looking at other news and what's happening around the country and around the world. Remember, tomorrow is the D-Day for Tanzania elections, and they wake up in 24 hours. Polls will be open, and Tanzanians will go to the polls to elect new leadership from president all the way to Kajuras. We'll be following that tomorrow. Kajura.
Okay.
Ask the Tanzanians.
Got it.
I'll tell you what are these. But let's begin where we always begin this show, and this is tracking COVID-19 in numbers.
Important to look at where we are right now, guys, because reports coming from all quarters is that things are not looking very good. Let's look at the numbers in Kenya yesterday. Low compared to what we had seen over the last 3 days. 276 new cases and 18 new deaths. Now taking Kenya's numbers just under 50,000. So 49,997 cases now having been recorded in Kenya. And unfortunately now, 920 deaths in the country. This all is amidst reports of several things happening. COVID patients jam hospitals, and this is recorded across news media. Public and private hospitals are reporting a strain as the number of people suffering from coronavirus surges countrywide. And another one, a new wave of COVID-19 infections is sweeping through the country. Hospitals are full with intensive care units, beds hard to come by, and fatalities rising at an alarming rate. But even as the country crosses the 50,000 COVID-19 infectious mark, with the death toll heading north of 900, a majority of Kenyans have thrown caution to the wind, disregarding the health ministry guidelines. This
It
is what we're
indeed
looking
very
at
true
today.
that many Kenyans have thrown caution to the wind. It is also indeed very true, as we hear every day, that we still have COVID-19 cases in the country. I have an issue with the way we report sometimes. COVID-19 cases have sharply risen. Hospitals are full. Hospitals are full. How many people are in hospital according to the government? How many are in hospital right now? If
Let's
you tell me
start-
1,000 people are in hospital right now, is that hospitals are full?
Yes, and
Yeah.
if they are full, what's our bed capacity? Let's start
Surely.
there.
Yeah.
So that when you say they are full, we know the 1,000 beds that are in that hospital are all full. Okay?
And this is countrywide.
Yes.
Because you're talking about the number of people in hospital right now, countrywide. At what point do we say hospitals? Which hospital is full? It would be followed by several people were turned away from X hospital, which had no capacity, and therefore those patients had to be transferred or had to be admitted elsewhere. That would then tell the story. But I think that sometimes when we report and go, hospitals are full, deaths are rising. Yeah, true. Deaths are rising. True. Many more people are going to hospital right now. True. Hospitals are reporting, maybe an increase in the number of people who are symptomatic turning up in hospital. Yes.
Right.
Full. Aye.
In terms of those who are showing up with symptoms, in terms of those who are currently 20 patients in intensive care unit, 52 on supplementary oxygen, 20 are in high or at the high dependency unit, according to CS Mutahi Kagwe. 1,191 hospital admissions currently around the country.
1,191.
191. Yep, so that's what we're
Okay.
looking at.
Do we get these reports county by county?
Well, I mean,
Yep.
what we get county by county, yes, in terms of infection numbers and as well as those who have been
Do we
admitted.
highlight the areas in that county that that could qualify as being an epicenter?
Specific areas within specific counties.
Yes.
I don't see that, actually, even when they report it. Maybe they have that information, which is then not transmitted in the media, in the news, because the news only does, is to say, of the new cases, X were in this county, X in the other county. In the specific county, unless now the ministry at the announcement goes and says, we have noticed that in Mombasa, Old Town is an epicenter, or in Nairobi, Isli is an epicenter. Until then, we don't get to know.
And it would be important. Because if you look, for instance, and why this is why I'm asking, if you look, for instance, at the case of the Tononoka headmaster in Mombasa, who reportedly died from COVID infections,
Yeah.
11 teachers were tested positive in that school. All right? Now that should tell you something, isn't it? 11 is a bit many. Now, if you do not give certain details, then you do not prepare the people who come from whichever part of the country they come from, the information with which they could actually then perhaps take appropriate action. Because let's say, for instance, those 11 teachers, let's say 5 of them came from one part of the town, whichever part of the town they came, then you'd say, wait a moment, how is it that 5 teachers coming from that area all test positive? What is it about that particular area? Yes.
So the epicenter is in the town, not necessarily the school. So maybe
Yes.
it started from the town,
Yes.
moved to the school.
Yes.
That's possible. It's
You
all
see,
possible.
with something of this sort, when you have a pandemic, you don't want a minimalist approach when it comes to details. It's important that people are forewarned, that people are told, that people are informed. It's important.
Yeah.
And the information is actually in the details, right? When we started off, that's how we started off. We said Nairobi, lockdown. Mombasa, lockdown. Because, yes. And the reasons were given. You couldn't go in, you couldn't go out officially.
Yeah.
Yes. And we reaped huge from that particular action. We really benefited from it.
Sure, we did.
Yes.
The numbers around the world continue to soar, however, and now we're looking at almost 9 million cases in the continental United States. If we look into Western Europe and some of these European countries, France, for example, yesterday recorded quite a number of cases, and we were looking at daily new cases yesterday in France of, I'm just going to find that. So we're looking at 52,010 cases just yesterday, and then the day before yesterday, and then yesterday was 26,771. We know that a lot of these countries now are under lockdown. France had locked down 8 of its major cities a week ago, and has now then locked down Paris and its suburbs, and said, in and out movement, we're not going to do that for now, and then we're going to recall children from school because of the high numbers of cases that they're seeing. Spain has followed suit. The UK did this a while ago. Italy also in the same direction. So this is what we're looking at.
No, the direction in Italy is worse because people are rioting, not protesting, rioting.
People don't want to be locked down again.
No, they are rioting, and the rioting has gone out of control. Shops have been broken into. All right? People are looting. Ostensibly, the reason is that they are protesting the restrictions.
They don't want.
Yes, remember there were restrictions.
They don't want to go back.
No, and
No,
they were feeling the restrictions should have borne some fruit, and now they don't want this second. There is a second wave of restrictions.
Yeah,
and they're protesting against it.
Remember, by the time the restrictions were being lifted in Italy, they had even started protesting.
Yes, they had.
Because of saying, we've run out of our savings, we have no money to buy food. So there were very many people who were pouring out into the streets saying, look, come on, we've reached the end of this tether.
You see, why Italy is important for me in this discussion is because there's a culture in Italy that people, in the evening, people have their meals outside. They go to restaurants and what have you. Now, part of the problem is that they're being told that you shut down by 6 restaurants and say, what do you mean? People aren't going to come to restaurants to eat at 5.
People are having a dinner until well into the evening.
Exactly. So that aside, they're saying exactly what you just mentioned, that we are broke. We don't have money. There is no understanding of what tomorrow will hold for us economically. Now, this is the same reason that our government also gave when we decided to open up.
Yeah.
Now, this is what they're protesting because they aren't being given a clear way forward despite this. But if you think that's a problem, in Belgium, in Brussels to be specific, the government is even asking health workers who test positive but are not symptomatic to report to work. Because, as they say, they're overwhelmed. And why they're saying this is, if they don't manage this, the health system will break down.
Yeah.
There's overwhelmed, but you're functioning. It'll break down. If it breaks down, now you have a
bigger problem.
Another problem, and it's a massive one.
So you test positive, but you're asymptomatic, just wear PPEs.
Just continue working.
Just come back to work.
That's how serious this thing has become.
It's a big thing.
It is.
It is a big thing. And I think that just the way you're saying, it's going to get into that second very tough couple of months for Europe as they go into the colder and colder months. And that is going to be an issue for them. And they'll be wondering, so what else are we going to do? How do we handle ourselves with this?
Sure. The storm has already
But of interest, we should look at China and ask you. It's not that people aren't testing positive. Yeah, but they're not dying. And also, it's not that when people test positive, they're all good. They don't.
There's something else.
Something else is happening. And this is something that we must ask.
It's interesting because China has not gone beyond 85,000 for the last 3 years. The most they've recorded in a day has been 80.
What about 6? Let's take a break now, see what happened in the weather. This one, love being children, and then we look at the headlines. Good morning, this is Kenya's biggest conversation, the situation.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
When it comes to bridging the information gap to help strengthen the agricultural sector in our country, you can always rely on Farm Kenya to be the glue holding everything together. And now, courtesy of the partnership with Farmster, things couldn't be better. Introducing Farm Kenya platform, and it goes like this. Our SMS service will help farmers upload and publish their products without smartphones, while the Farm Kenya app will allow buyers locate, purchase from, and engage the farmers directly. So if you're a farmer, send a free SMS to 40446 and connect with buyers free for life. That's 40446. If you're a buyer looking for local produce, download the Farm Kenya app from Google Play Store or the Apple Store for free. Remember, ukulima sio shamba pekee. Ukulima ni digital. Ukulima ni Farm Kenya platform.
Kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Brought to you by Farm Kenya and Farmstar, working to secure your growth. This week in your Nairobian newspaper, we give you stories of Nairobi sexcapades, from romps in millionaire dens to rods in footbridges over busy roads. Matatu gang going for your money and not just the fare. Miraa or Mogoka, who is the fairest of them all? To shave or not to shave? That is the question. Also, find out why security guards are beefing with politicians for calling them watchmen. For these and many more stories, grab a copy of your favorite newspaper, The Nairobian, to make your week an interesting one. The Nairobian. We know where you live.
In the face of COVID-19, life has been adversely affected, with nearly all schools in Kenya lacking basic hand-washing facilities, affecting more than 19 million children. Together with Davis and Shartleaf and True Black, we, the Standard Group, have partnered to collectively unite other corporates and individuals to join the initiative towards setting up basic sanitation facilities around the country. For more information, send an SMS to the short code 40616 or email standwithkenya@standardmedia.co.ke. Time to come together for tomorrow. It's our future. A partnership by Davis and Shartleaf and True Black and the Standard Group.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads. You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
Cloudy conditions in Nyeri at 15, highs of 21 and lows of 14. Thunderstorms expected later. It's 15 degrees and cloudy in Nakuru. Thunderstorms are in the forecast, highs of 22 and lows of 14. It's clear in Eldoret at the moment at 13, with a cloud up later into rain, highs of 21 and lows of 12. Kisumu is mostly cloudy at 21, highs of 26 and lows of 19. And it looks like a wet afternoon here as well. Mostly cloudy conditions in Kakamega will give way to rain later, highs of 20. Mombasa is partly cloudy at 25, with highs of 29 today, and rain looks far off in the distance. Not so far in Malindi this morning, highs of 28 and highs of 26. Currently mostly cloudy. Just about Kenya, then to Kampala, it's cloudy at 19. Dar es Salaam this morning is partly cloudy, with lows of rain this afternoon, 30 and lows of 24. Into Johannesburg, it's clear at 16, highs of 27 and lows of 15. Just some partly cloudy conditions later. Take a look then into Lagos, and it looks like partly cloudy conditions. The high will be 31. Moving on east into Beijing, and it's mostly sunny at 15, well into the afternoon, highs of 17 and down to lows of 4. In London, it's clear at 7 degrees, highs of 14, and a chance of rain later, coming down there to lows of 6. And in Paris, with 8, rain here, 13 and lows of 7 and fine for now. New York, still Monday night, it's cloudy, however, at 15, with highs of 60.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
It is
94.4 Spice FM.
Morning, the 27th day of October 2020. How are you doing? Welcome to the show wherever you are. The live stream is up, Spice FM KE, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Tuned and locked. Who is this who says tuned and locked? Very many people.
Sorry.
Moses Gashari, tuned and locked. The Ministry of Health has been irrelevant since the BBI is the vaccination to COVID. Umesikia hiyo maneno. And then there is Moses Gashari who says Yesterday, DP Ruto stood out from the crowd. Okay, now that's a whole different story. Yes, we shall discuss that later. Moses, karibu to the show. Charity Maina is tuned in Nakuru. Geoffrey Mochama is in Kisumu. Kibos locked. George Odur Olek tuned, and Laban Kaptei Tanui. Always a pleasure to see you in the morning. City.
Well done.
Yeah. Today's proverb. Moving on swiftly.
A
As if
fool.
nothing happened.
A fool, any fool,
Say it thrice.
has to say something. A wise man has something to say.
Omo, that thing is so relevant today.
Or more.
I'm telling you. It don't knock ground.
A fool has to say something.
Has to say something. A wise person has something to say. And if we're to go by the utterances of our sister here, that one can even be understood by your liver.
Yes.
Or more you don't know. Let's take a look at the headlines this morning, shall we?
Let's do that. What the Standard is calling the moments of truth, the Nation calls Uhuru Ruto clash. Start off with the Standard. Confessions. Uhuru reveals Ruto knew about the handshake. And says tribalism and ideal youth are time bomb. And idle youth are a time bomb. And DP makes a case against BBI. And Raila says it's game on. There were stories across board, and this has been covered on page 3 till 10. Many things happened on this particular day. But if you want to look at specific details of this, Day of Confessions, as the BBI report was launched. In a day of rare confessions, President Uhuru Kenyatta opened up on his role in Kenya's retrogressive politics, while at the same time revealed that his deputy was a key architect of the handshake journey. Not just the day, but previously and even after. At Bomas of Kenya, main auditorium yesterday, it was time for the Kenyan leadership to look inwards and confront the demons of the inglorious past that has informed the Building Bridges initiative. The launch of the BBI report provided the platform for the president to lift the lid as the country continues to debate the document that supporters argue is the magic potion to the country's political ills such as corruption, poverty, negative ethnicity, and divisive elections. Critics, among them the Deputy President, William Ruto, however, insist the document is a Trojan horse to deliver political positions to a few people in 2022. So that's the cover of it. Many things happened yesterday. One thing that stood out for a lot of people was very interesting, that the president, in no uncertain terms, made it clear that the deputy was aware that the handshake was going to happen. He was aware of the process, and he even advised on some of the individuals who were going to sit on the committee of experts, shall we call them?
And added by saying, if you think it isn't true, he's here.
He's here.
Ask him.
Yeah. That was interesting for a lot of people to see.
And then the DP's camp was also very quick to actually point out an interview where the DP had said the same thing. I was aware of the handshake. In fact, according now to the DP, Raila had approached him first.
Let's shake hands. Since you won't shake hands, I'll go shake hands with somebody else.
Yeah, and then he says, I was aware of the handshake. I was fully informed and all throughout. And then there's also the other beat where Raila says, no, Ruto was not aware. This was not just between me and the president. These are politicians. They'll tell us what they want when it suits their narrative. You know, various leaders and what they said, the Wiper leader, Kalonzo Musyoka, says, every time I go home, people ask me, Ruto has given us wheelbarrows. What have you given us? We have read the document, and it's time to move on. Let us stop radicalizing this country. There are many types of terrorism. If you start a class war, what are you doing? A class war is dangerous. The ANC leader, Musalia Mudavadi, he stood and he was speaking, and he had issues that he was raising, saying this. We discussed it with the ANC leadership. We had a rigorous debate on this. And what we'd like to report to you is from what we see. Remember, the ANC presented its memorandum to the BBI task force. They said, we found some areas that we agree with, and there are some areas that we don't necessarily disagree with, but we think that could be rectified. When it comes to matters devolution, the articles that have been touched tend to downgrade the role of the Senate when it comes to allocation of resources to the counties. The Senate is the anchor to devolution. I think that requires a review, not a rejection, but a review. He was very diplomatic in submission and choice of language. Like Keep Your Woman rep, Catherine Warugoro says, as youth, we are tired of being used every 5 years and being dumped thereafter. We suffer the most in the brunt of post-election skirmishes. We want a new conversation as young people. Now that you are ready to help us build bridges, we implore you and the Honorable Raila Odinga to close your ears to critics and move forward. So a lot of words that were said, and we'll be looking at what was said by whom and what it implies and how it translates. But well, the bottom line is the report has been launched.
But what I find interesting is that in this entire discussion about the BBI, there's 200 plus pages of document. The one issue that always seems to be at the forefront of every discussion is the leadership sharing at the top. Other things are mentioned. You hear an article.
Executive.
Yes, you hear an article mentioned here and there. You hear the police service mentioned here and there, judiciary, the Senate mentioned here and there. But the one that seems to raise some serious heat, really serious heat, and the one that seems to be the point of attack for everyone who wants to attack the BBI, seems to be that configuration. Yes.
Sure.
Well, it stands out. You see, as politicians they look at what areas of politics are standing out for us. There are very many that also talk about and focus on Parliament, but the conversation always comes to the top, because our politics, like we said, and that I'll be pushing later, is about the leaders who want to be at the top.
True.
And they're the ones who want to shape the conversation of what is happening in everything else.
And yet, the BBI, as we've said on many occasions, provides an opportunity for conversations that ordinarily we don't have. Now, and also an opportunity for a politician to show their hand and to show their standing on these matters that they always talk about regarding the so-called common man and woman.
Yeah.
Now, if the center of your focus is not that, because the BBI touches on very many things that actually concern, why don't I hear discussion, a loud discussion? It's whispers about, say, the allocation to the counties. Why limit at 35? Why not 50? Okay, why not even 60 for that matter? Okay, the role of the national government in alleviating poverty, the things that genuinely concern. Yes, we have COVID. It tells us that other pandemics could come.
Yep.
Our preparedness for
Even
such disasters.
this conversation actually on healthcare should also be happening.
Yes. You don't. Now, these are the things that concern. So an opportunity here in my mind is lost, because the politicians have once again shown us exactly what they're made of and what they think of us.
Yep. The conversation is about the what has an impact on the political class.
Yes.
And not necessarily what will have an impact on the people.
No. By the time a document has 200 plus pages, believe me, it can't be just talking about the top leadership.
It can't.
It talks about everything that you can think of within the economy. Otherwise, because even when they went around, it's not as though people just told them, change this. No.
That goes to show you then how much importance then is placed on the issues that really matter. On the issues that really matter. On can you have a livelihood that is sustainable? Is it that you have development infrastructure that helps it move forward? Is it that where you were 10 years ago is not where you are today? And then it goes to show you again, even the clearly it's not based on whereby it should be focused that benefits the country. Should be.
That should be the conversation. Let's take a break, another break now at 6:30. See what's happening on the roads. Traffic starting to build up. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Listen every morning. We have in the room CT Muga, Indigo Call, and Eric
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Okay, is it crazy? We don't know. Okay, let's take a look. Thika Road this morning. Traffic is slow, but it's moving towards Survey on the highway, and that's about 6:30. So that is great. It's moving, it's slow, but it's moving all the same. If you haven't left before,
Traffic.
you're about to leave. This is when you get hotter. Okay, so Thika Road looking good. It's building up on Mombasa Road all the way to SGR towards General Motors. Traffic there. And out through Mombasa Road. If you haven't left, you might want to give some time. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck. But it's really got the Gateway Mall, through to the SGR, and then outwards to Bomas. And that's moving slow. We're looking into the industrial area around Bukalunga, Crony there. It's not too bad. Also, Jogger Road is using the right hand. Doesn't look too bad. Take a look at about half hour sales. Eastern and Southern Light. Try to come take you, that's how you can take
Sugar and spice and everything nice, everything nice. Ice FM.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
28 minutes to 7. The conversation continues. Let's look at
Mornings
what
done
our
right.
are saying. Castro Odipo on Twitter is saying, well, what happened to you this morning? Nakuru had to a party tenor since Jana. Well, Castro, thank you very much for reporting that this morning, and our technical team is working on that. All our Twitter birds this morning. Vincent, remember that moment that you wanted to give us the minute?
the one that you guys needed?
Yeah. And CT was like, no, we don't want it. Keep it. But Vincent says, let me take it.
Vincent has taken it.
That minute has been taken by Vincent to say good morning and to congratulate all of you for the good work that you do every weekday morning from 6 to 10, listening to the show from Donholm in Nairobi. Vincent Asante Sana, and from Makwara Western. Good morning, Pascal Kwena Kijana Mkul. More headlines in the papers.
So,
Let's talk about this COVID.
let's do it.
Can I?
Please go
read
ahead.
this?
Read.
So the story, though, is on page 12 of the Standard this morning. It's talking about the surge in COVID-19 cases that is putting a strain on hospitals, and patients who are asymptomatic are now turning symptomatic. Many counties have had record high coronavirus cases in recent days, leaving hospitals struggling. Most of these patients are symptomatic and they require admission to break the chain of transmission, according to medics. As of Sunday, 1,198 patients were admitted to various hospitals across the country. 18 were in ICU, 49 on supplementary oxygen, while 16 were in the high dependency unit. The country recorded the highest hospital admissions, 1,167 on October 24th, while 3,464 were on home-based care. Now let's look at the hospitals and the various facilities around the country. So the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, MTRH in Eldoret, is among the public hospitals that have recorded a high number of admissions. A source at the hospital said the facility has 48 beds that are fully occupied. The hospital CEO, Dr. Wilson Arwasa, said there are 100 isolation beds and there are over 80 COVID-19 patients admitted to the referral facility. Medica de Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital says they're almost full. There are 130 isolation beds at the facility. They have 87 admitted. Reports by the health department said the hospital has 20 ICU beds for managing patients in critical state. The isolation ward at the Kisumu County Hospital is full. The facility has 85 isolation beds that are all occupied, according to a healthcare giver who requested anonymity. Let's look at the other parts of the country. Kakamega. Last week, Kakamega County opened up Likuyani Sub-County Hospital following a surge in symptomatic patients. Initially, patients were being admitted to Mumias Level 4, which has 58 beds. According to Acting Chief Officer of Medical Services, John Otieno, the facility has a capacity of 50 isolation beds, and the number of patients who require admissions are symptomatic, with major having coughs, fever, and chills. That is in Western Kenya, Kakamega. If we just look at KMPDC, this is the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council, which says there are 7,612 isolation beds and 319 ICU beds countrywide. So 7,612, and currently we have about 1,000 and maybe about 1,200 people admitted in hospitals countrywide. Are hospitals full? If you look at it from the bigger picture countrywide,
Capacity-wise?
no. But there are several facilities that have reached their limit. Was that the limit that had been advised? Was that when a hospital, for example, has 58 beds as isolation, was that part of how many were they supposed to have? Isolation beds? 30,000.
Across the country,
30,000,
yes.
right. And what we have, according to Dr. Yumbia, Mr. Yumbia, is 7,000.
Just short of 8,000, right.
And money was allocated and money was delivered,
And
Yep.
it was reported that every county had the beds that they needed.
with the exception of just a few.
42 to be exact.
But
42 to be exact.
Out of 30,000 bed capacity isolation units, beds that were supposed to have been put up in the counties, only 7,000
Are available.
are available.
Yes.
Okay, we hit 1,000 countrywide, and already we are starting to raise alarm and saying, you know what, we are not doing so well.
Oh, I mean, you hit 1,000 in 2 weeks.
1,200.
Yeah, in 2 weeks.
If we had 30,000 bed capacity, we would still not be feeling that pressure.
No.
Why are we feeling the pressure?
Because in 2
We have
weeks,
hired
you've gotten
new
to
doctors, we have
1,200.
done all those things.
Because in 2 weeks, you've gotten 1,200. And if that's the trend that you're going with now, in the next 4 weeks, essentially, you would be at double that number. And then you will only have
Concern,
3,000.
yes. Pressure, no.
Well, concern, sure.
That's the point I'm making.
Okay, so we shouldn't be feeling any pressure.
No.
We should be concerned.
We should be raising concern and saying, look, the trend is showing that, okay, we have 1,200 in 2 weeks. If we get to another 5 weeks, we hit 2,000. We're like, all right, these numbers are rising. But getting to a point where we're saying hospitals are full, no.
No, I don't. Look, I think it could
shouldn't
be
be where we are.
I think it could be misleading, and it could get people to panic in a manner in which we shouldn't. But what it should get people to do is to then, take these measures seriously. And I think that's what this kind of information
and what is wrong if people panic?
The time for panicking flew out. You should have panicked a long time ago.
No.
Is it now that you
No,
want to take a panic?
No.
The point I'm making is that our government is being caught flat-footed once again. This should not... 1,200 people in hospitals across the country in a population of 47 million people should not be a point where we are now even having to report it this way. How many reports have we just read here? They're saying out of 112 beds, 83 people in this hospital, we are almost running out.
The problem is that in terms of preparedness, I can see where you're coming, but the problem is that in terms of preparedness, then the country is not ready, even if it was something else. That you have under 10,000 in terms of isolation facilities,
Yep.
under 10,000 in a country of 47 million with a pandemic. I mean, just looking at the numbers, that should be the cause for concern. That if you get to a point where so many more people are infected, the bottom line is that you're not going to be able to take care of them.
We have a case where more people are going to be infected.
Yes, it's going to happen.
And we've introduced a new item into this particular equation, children in schools. When they were at home, they were just at home. Huh? The responsibility of their parents. Now, they're out. The numbers may not be that great, but the numbers are significant.
Even if they're not great, in terms of then children being affected and infected, that's a danger that you don't want to toy around with. And I'll be arguing that later. That you can't play chance. There's a game in Nigeria we call chance. You can't play chance with a thing like this, especially then when children are involved.
Remember, it's against a backdrop of the economy also opening up. Huh? So the restriction that even the parents had you need to look at places like, I'm going to give Australia as an example, Melbourne, Victoria. The time they were reporting 700 infections daily. Daily! Around June. Now, from June, when they instituted the lockdown, the numbers have gone down to the point where we only knew that New Zealand, who have a population of 5 million, Australia has a population of 24 million, we figured, well, New Zealand has a few. Australia now has no cases, none, as we're speaking now. The lockdown was maintained, and Eric actually understood it well when he said, these people and their government have an understanding. People are asked to do certain things, and they abide.
Also, it comes from a historical perspective
Because of
that
what the
government
government is
has
doing,
been
as
telling
it
their
tells
people
you.
the truth before COVID, has been clear with their people in terms of how they're going to operate.
And
Before
their
COVID,
people have seen.
they've seen evidence of the same. So something else comes along down the road. It's not going to be difficult for a government to convince its people that this is the way in which we should operate.
Yeah.
So that then it doesn't become a directive. It's a suggestion.
It's a
And because
relationship.
people have seen the relationship that they've previously
It's a relationship
had,
of trust.
they're going to go with it.
Now, whereas ours is one of
Distrust.
extreme mistrust.
Distrust even.
Extreme. No, it's not your garden variety, mild. It's card carrying.
But even as we say that, the number of deaths is also a point of concern.
It is.
If you just look on October 18th, we had 7 deaths. The following day, 7 deaths reported. On the 20th, 3 deaths reported. The following day, 16. The next day after, 23rd October, 14 deaths. 24th October, 12 deaths. 25th October, 6 deaths. Those are many. Those are many people who
Those are
will be
very
dying.
many people.
And the question that I remember Dr. Marcy Korir constantly asking is, we should also audit these deaths. Did these people have to die? So, like, what happened in terms of what efforts were made to save their lives? Was it a point of, akona COVID, amekufa, akiwoye, ongeza hiyo kwa list? Or was there a lot of effort that was actually taken and done to ensure that they don't? Well, there are people who probably had needed extra supplementary oxygen that they didn't get. Are there people who needed to have been moved to a HDU facility that were not moved on time? Are there people who should have been admitted earlier but they were not admitted?
Or people who presented themselves to hospital by the time things had already deteriorated.
Yep.
Right? And those are things that you cannot see on the surface of it. But by the time they get, look at one of the cases that we heard most recently. Somebody went to hospital, he was put in the ICU, but by then his lungs had gotten to the point where he was not able to breathe on his own. And so unfortunately, he succumbed.
Yep.
So, I think there's several cases like that. But it would be interesting to see specifics. An audit of this, I think, is important to see then what happened and who was suffering from what at which point in time.
It's important to verify these things and just find out exactly what is it that happened. Let's take a break and then we'll look at more headlines shortly. This is a situation. Remember, this is the richest number one broadcast in Nairobi, 94.4, Malindi, 90.7, Nyeri, 90.9, Eldoret, 96.7, 102.5 in Kisumu, Mombasa is 87.9, and on Nakuru frequency is 96.0. That there is a technical issue with our Nakuru frequency. Bear with us out and meanwhile, live stream the show. You can watch us on Facebook, Spice FM KE, or YouTube, or Twitter, Spice FM KE. Or also go to our website, spicefm.co.uk. It's 16 minutes.
Spice FM, Malindi. Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right. Another headline you wanted to share with us?
So, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, wants a Nairobi court to order a medical examination on former Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Waitito. Mr. Haji made the application after Mr. Waitito failed to turn up in the anti-corruption court yesterday for the third time for a criminal trial of the 510 million shillings corruption case. He wants the court to direct the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board to appoint 3 doctors to establish the former county boss's health condition. The court was told that Mr. Waitito was in hospital after contracting COVID-19. However, through a team of 4 state counsel, Mr. Haji said that there is need to ascertain the medical condition of Mr. Waitito as it has affected the criminal trial in which he is charged alongside 8 others, including his wife. Led by state counsel Victor Mulay, the prosecutors said the trial would not be delayed because of Mr. Waitito's absence. They urged the court to allow the case to proceed in his absence. The conduct of the first accused person is making it impossible for the trial to commence. This is not the first time the hearing is failing to take place. His conduct is meant to delay the hearing of the case. This can't be held in abeyance by this court cannot be held in abeyance by his conduct. The prosecutor also took a swipe on medical documents produced by Mr. Waitito's lawyer, John Swaka, saying that they were not reliable. The 2 documents cannot be said to be authored by the hospital, Jumia Hospital, or a doctor. The source is not known and the author is not ascertained. He urged the court to be guided by the overriding objective of the interest of justice. So, he might have to take a test under the watchful eye of the state.
Remember, we had this case that was the rage a while back, Kakuzi Limited. Well, now, we are informed, page 6 of the Business Daily, that Kakuzi seeks to settle rights abuse case out of court. Okay. This is what they are quoted at the headquarters of Camellia PLC, the company that owns 50.7% of Kakuzi. Undoubtedly, even if only some of these claims are true, something has gone very wrong in the company we invest in.
That's what they've said.
They are quoted, yes. And these claims have prompted Camellia to take urgent action to review and, if appropriate, upgrade the group's governance and safeguarding oversight functions to ensure that in every respect they comply with the UN guiding principles on business and human rights.
Okay.
So settling out of court, some sort of, admission of some sort, and a statement to commit to rectify.
But also of interest, even as they talk, they already, as we speak, and as I read rather, they have spent over 500 million shillings in legal expenses. And now, having done that, they now want a quick settlement.
They just want that. This thing it's hurting our reputation.
It's hurting the reputation and it's clearly escalating.
Lady.
Yes.
Once again.
But the good thing is that now they want to ensure that these good governance issues are cascaded to any subsidiaries that they may have right across the world.
What? Okay.
Yes. They don't want such a thing rearing its head again. It's been damaging.
So you know how we always complain about projects that have not been completed and, saying that government needs to take the bull by the horns and finish some of the development projects. Right. So in MyGov, in the Standard today, millions to access clean water after 650 projects were finalized. Millions of Kenyans will soon have access to clean, safe, affordable and sustainable water supplies once the ongoing massive infrastructure projects implemented by the government are complete. Water, Sanitation and Irrigation Cabinet Secretary Cicely Karaoke says the government is currently implementing 650 projects across the country, all at different levels of completion. And at some point, it would be that they have been completed, right? The projects will increase water access to 80% by 2022. She spoke at the Nairobi South Sea-based Kenya Water Institute during the institution's 32nd graduation ceremony, where 549 graduates received diplomas and certificates, etc., etc. She said once the country achieves 80% water coverage by 2022, the government will then embark on bridging, there's that word, the remaining 20% water coverage by 2030. So by 2030, the entire country would have access to clean, affordable, and sustainable water.
That's not even big. By 2022, 80% of the country will have access to water.
Yes. And then 10 years later, everybody would have access.
Why 10?
We are not talking about the distance. We're just saying that there's water coverage, right? Because that's very important that we clarify.
Yes.
If you're saying that there is water in your area, doesn't
It doesn't
necessarily
mean that
that
it's
in
coming
your
out
house.
in your house. No.
It's not a tap in your house.
No, it means that
There's a river bar passing by.
stone throw where you can go with your things and get water.
Yeah.
Where in some cases right now, people have to walk for kilometers to get water on a daily basis, right?
And
This,
why?
this
She says-
80%.
She says the objective is to upgrade the National Water Research function at the Institute and strengthen in order to meet the growing needs of the water sector. That's what she's saying, that what they really need is at least to increase the footprint of water provision across the country.
Okay. And they give details of how they want to do this?
Well, sure.
A number of things that they've done so far.
You see what? Let me explain why I ask. Huh? Right now, with climate change and all that, we have more water than we know what to do with. Now, I would assume that in the face of abundance, you'd have
Harvesting is a big issue.
Water harvesting,
yes, and
completing the dams.
and storage, and everything else that goes with managing this resource that is in abundance. Because a time not too long from now, we will be talking about droughts, and we'll be talking about there not being sufficient water. This is what I'm asking about.
I think, and that's why I'm insistent on how the terminology that's being used so that we understand it from that point. They're talking about water coverage. Truth of the matter is, yes, since the water reforms that were initiated a couple of years back, about 17 years ago, a lot has happened in expanding water provision services. But I do not speak out of any actual knowledge that I have on this. Anecdotally, 80% water coverage in 2 years' time is not really
Well, you mean
a
you're assuming that
reality
they're starting now.
is in my head.
They're
No,
not
saying,
starting now. 650 projects already ongoing.
look,
Right? And they hope
they're
to
not
complete
starting
them
now.
by
They're saying that
2022.
by 2022
They would have
we'll
completed.
have 80% of the country,
Yes.
of the population of the people in this country.
So by now, maybe it's
having
like 50, 60.
water coverage.
This is what
There's
they're
no
saying.
way they can be at 50, 60 now and do 30% in. These 650 projects are not 30%.
You don't have faith in your government?
No, I
No,
don't.
no,
have a
no.
lot of
It's,
faith.
it's, it's not a question of faith.
I have a lot of faith.
It is a question of being realistic about your government. It's not faith.
Okay. She said that 650 will be finalized.
The 650 projects is fine. They can
And
be
the
finalized.
650 now will,
but
will equate to 80% of the country being covered.
with the completion of the 650?
Yes.
All right. Sawa too. MP faces graft charges in 12 billion shillings saga, and this story is going nowhere. Madeira MP Rigathi Gachagua is today set to be presented in court on charges of corruption and money laundering after he allegedly failed to explain the source of billions of shillings that passed through his bank accounts. Gachagua was last evening arrested by detectives from the Serious Fraud Unit attached to the DCI, who had been looking for him since Sunday. The MP was arrested as he returned home from Nyeri and was driven straight to the DCI headquarters on Kiambu Road for processing ahead of the appearance this morning. He's been in the crosshairs of both the DCI and the Asset Recovery Agency for some time now, over the way tenders involving his companies were issued. In a suspected case of conflict of interest, the DCI says a number of companies belonging to the MP were awarded tenders by the Madeira Constituency Development Fund, and investigations further show that the number of companies that received tenders from the constituency wired money to accounts belonging to the MP. Like I said, this is a story that has been there for a while. Keeps popping in. The Assets Recovery Agency comes and says, look, we are looking for 12 billion shillings. We can only find 5.2 billion shillings. Where is the other money? How was this money coming from various companies into accounts that are associated with the MP, and then the money again is sent out? Is there an issue of money laundering? The case goes to court today.
So,
Big one. Big one.
let's see.
Yeah,
12 billion is a lot of money.
it is a lot of money. Even 5 billion, what they say.
My friend,
this is
1
the only
billion.
amount we found. 5 in somebody's account.
5 billion
Billion shillings.
in an account.
5 billion shillings that the Asset Recovery Agency located in the MP's accounts. 5.2. You know, 0.2 is 200 million. Like a 0.2 there.
It's 200 million.
How do you write 5 billion shillings? How do you go and then you go to the bank and ask them,
How to withdraw?
Fill out that thing there. Account balance inquiry. And you know, some of these guys just write for you there.
They write on a little piece of paper.
Guy starts writing. So that's what I'm doing. 5 0 1 2 2 5 5 5 5 0 5 0 0.25 CR.
Sheesh.
Takes 5 minutes to write that down.
Your balance.
That's your balance.
That actually does require some explaining, doesn't it?
It would.
It not only would, it does, because it isn't really pocket change, isn't it?
Yep.
And it isn't as though it's an accumulation of your salary for the last year.
Yep.
Okay? So $1 billion is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Page 9 of the Standard of the Nation, says salaries shocker for civil servants because sitting allowances are meant to go and no more secrecy over salaries. Civil servants will lose sitting allowances. Ministries will be compelled to divulge the salaries for all employees, and the wage bill will be slashed to fund development projects. These are the proposals of the BBI report that was launched yesterday. It recommends the appointment of a team that will work with the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to rationalize public officers' pay. Identifies these as administrative actions that the government should implement immediately to ensure scarce public resource finance development, and states that there should be a clarification of the legal and administrative powers that the SRC has to ensure it oversees all salary reviews and changes. It pushes for the reduction of the wage bill, which will see cuts in personal emoluments to ensure that at least 30% of national and county budgets are dedicated to development. The report wants the Controller of Budget and Auditor General to strictly enforce the provisions of the Public Finance Management Act. Basically saying, we want to make sure that from the BBI or through the BBI, more and more money goes into development, less and less money goes into paying salaries. Wages, sitting allowances, traveling allowances, overnight allowances, lunch allowances, hosting allowances, entertainment allowances.
The budget has always been remuneration heavy, and that's where a majority of the budget
flowers,
goes
mandas.
to. Get rid of all that, and you'll find that you have quite a lot that you can.
Wait
do so
a
much
moment.
more with.
Are we saying we hadn't gotten rid of this?
No.
Of what?
What?
Of mandas
Yes.
and flowers.
Where?
Yes.
You haven't visited a government office lately,
Recently.
have you?
No.
COVID, I understand. However, still exists. Flowers, tea, all those nice things. Yeah, that's what.
Did you see yesterday's event? Did you see the flowers at
Just the
Bomas of
flowers.
Kenya yesterday?
Flowers.
Look at any of the photos
Marida.
of Bomas.
You know, it hadn't occurred to me to actually look for the flowers, yes, but now that you mention it.
Look for the flowers. You'll see them. They actually look for you. You don't need to look for them.
Those things still exist. I actually don't have a problem with reducing those numbers in terms of.
It
the
shouldn't
spend.
be even that. You know, it's not even a question of being tongue-tied. I'm gob-stopped because really,
Your gob has been stopped.
yes, my breath has been taken away. Let's put it that way, because the
Next, you'll tell us gobble the cook. What was that thing they say? Gobble the
Book has
cook.
been gobbled.
I was thinking more.
Your gob stopped. Found your tongue yet?
It's in place, but the thing is, how deep and how wide and how profound has this culture of impunity permeated into our our very being? Because you can't take a step without encountering.
Really, everywhere you look,
Yes,
Unity.
you
because
have to look for it. It's
Yes.
like the flowers.
no, it's like
You
the
find
air. No,
them.
it's not flowers. You need to look. You have to encounter by. It's like the air we breathe.
We're coming to the top of the hour. This is the situation in this kind of conversation. In the next hour, we will look at aspects of the Building Green initiative. So right here, we'll also be live on Facebook for 1 hour. And it's online, morning about 7 o'clock.
spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
So right about 7 o'clock, and we see that it has picked up on Thika Road today. Traffic has started as far back as Roasters, and Roasters all the way through to Pangani this morning. And we know that matatus on this particular route are carrying in excess of the passengers that they should be this morning, and have less vehicles on the road in terms of public transport. So it's affecting people, guys. Juja Road, also some traffic there, heading then towards into the city centre. Mombasa Road is also moving very, very slowly, bumper to bumper in some parts. So if you started out, this is what you're going to meet ahead. Mabaiga, towards Pangani is slow on the highway. The service lane, however, is pretty fast, and will take you too long to get there. Okay, Kiambu Road, mishmash this morning already. 4 lanes so far. We're probably looking at 6 by the time we get to 8 o'clock. It makes sense, guys. If you just stuck to the 2 lanes, maybe you would go a little bit faster. I don't understand. This math doesn't seem to make sense to many people. Create more lanes to get stuck for longer. I don't know. Okay, so let's see what it looks like in a short while. But for now, 2 big ones, Mombasa Road, Thika Road. The eastern and southern bypasses, longer routes to and from the city. However, you'll get there quicker. Spice FM KE, get in touch with us on Twitter or text us 401.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
2.5 minutes after 7. Very good morning to you on this 27th day of October 2020, final Tuesday of October in this year. Thank you very much for being with us, and this is the second hour of the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM every weekday morning, also online, spicefm.co.ke, and Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. For the next 1 hour, we are also live on KTN Home. Good morning to you, our audience on KTN Home. So yesterday, the BBI report was launched. Colorful ceremony at the Bomas of Kenya, attended by various personalities in our national leadership. The president was there, the deputy president was there, the opposition leader Raila Odinga was there, other opposition leaders Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Wetangula were all there. Governors were there as well, and members of parliament, and other leaders, including faith-based and religious organization leaders, all there, all present. And those that gave their opinion on the BBI, many were positive on what the BBI has done and what the BBI affords the country, which is an opportunity to reflect and an opportunity to speak about what ails our country. In fact, even the president, when he was speaking, he said, look, guys, let's not run away from this. Let's confront what our issues are. Maybe we have issues, maybe we don't, but he says, let's confront what our issues are. And he said, look, let's not lie to ourselves. We are tribal in how we think, in how we vote. And we have to discuss then how do we address that and how do we make sure that that tribalism does not destroy the fabric that we're using to build this nation. In the BBI report itself, from the very first report, they identified a number of issues, and some of them, and I'm going to just quote a couple of them, ethnic antagonism and competition. And they said that we must reject and censure anyone who conducts themselves in a negative and hateful way, and this, they were quoting the president who has said this before, identified as an issue. Lack of national ethos. They say that we are defined internationally by negative politics, by corruption, by violence. That is the image that Kenya has and the international sphere, according to the BBI task force. Issues of inclusivity, and inclusivity is very clear and doesn't need a lot of explanation. There is a perception, and that's what you even explained yesterday, CT, that there's a perception among people in the country that they do not belong to the high table that governs the country. The issue of divisive elections was also pointed out. If you look at all this, these are not new issues that are being discussed now. These are issues that were discussed even in the clamor for the 2010 constitution. These were issues that are being canvassed even by the CKRC of Yashpal Gai before they released their report in 2002, before we went to Bomas half in 2002 and then the other half in 2003 to 2004 and 5. These were issues that were being discussed. The Constitution of Kenya 2010 sought to address these issues by making sure that it's a people's constitution. It's a covenant between their people and how they want to be governed, and how people determine how they want to be governed by those that they elect to govern them. If you look at the problems that we are seeing here, in my submission, the issue of ethnic antagonism and competition, and the issue of inclusivity, I'm just going to pick those two. Right now, without any, tell Ruto, Raila, Uhuru, Musalia, Kalonzo, Dr. Alpha Mutua, just tell them to keep quiet for 2 weeks. Will people be looking at each other from a tribal lens? How many neighbors do you have? Do you know that? Do you look at them from, there are 3 Kikuyus and 5 Luos, and do you think about them every day as you meet them? Oh, here is that Luo, or here is that Kikuyu. Do you think about them that way? Do you make decisions on what is happening in your neighborhood based on, who is, from what tribe does this person come? No, we cannot elect this person as a chairman of our Nyumba Kumi because of their tribe. Does that actually happen at the local level? And I want to say that that doesn't happen. It only happens when the political leaders start painting that story, when the political leaders start pushing that narrative that we are tribal, we have tribal antagonism, we are not included in the sharing of the national cake. That is when an issue comes in. And I want to submit this morning that Kenya's problem will not be solved by this BBI, by the Constitution of Kenya 2010, by doing a new constitution and calling it Constitution of Kenya 2020. The problem is a lack of honest leadership. And that is what we ought to confront. Honest leadership. When leaders do not do what they are supposed to do, when leaders do not implement the Constitution fully, when leaders do not obey the Constitution itself, when leaders do not do the work that they are elected to do in the National Assembly or in the Senate, when leaders fail to do what they're supposed to do and then they turn back and they tell us that our problem is that because of the tribe that you come from and the tribe that you come from and the tribe that I come from, that is our biggest problem, I disagree. And that's my submission.
Well, it's been put out there that has been the issue over and over and over again. I often think that where you want to see the real footprint of a country is when you look and you deal with the people. And like you said, the people are the ones, for me, who will interpret this. I don't see that this fight then comes out on the issues of tribe when people are dealing one to the other. I think it has been used as a political tool in terms of divisive politics. I think it has been used to play a card over and over and over again, and the time for such really must come to an end. And I think people are starting to see this. I think that people are starting to see, hold on a minute, previously you've used this to divide us from one to the other. But we see that the things that actually bring us together are far beyond issues of tribe, and it shouldn't actually come into play. I do think that what needs to happen is that there needs to be a moral regeneration in the country. Mm-hmm. I don't think that what defines Kenya's people are its politics in the way in which we see it. Unfortunately, it has been a tool that has been used to define and divide, and people should actually use those which are truly the case to define and unite themselves on issues that this BBI would want to bring in. I think it's been used for too long, and I think it's about time that it be dumped to the side. And the people should actually at some point stand up and make leaders who use this tool to divide them off and to realize and say that, you know what, we realize that this is what has been done previously and we're not going to take it anymore. Because when you sit and have a conversation with someone, it sounds so rudimentary, but it is the case. When you sit and have a conversation with someone, one Kenyan to another, you really are not thinking about where they're from. When you're doing business, you're not thinking about where they're from. When you're in the marketplace, when you're in the street, when you're boarding a matatu together, when you're sitting in class together, when you're having a meal together, you're not thinking about where the individual is from. So why then is it so possible for rulers or leaders to come and use that tool to divide you? And I'm saying it's about time that the scale falls off the eyes of many people, of many Kenyans, to say, hold on a minute. Why is it then so easy for them to divide us on these lines, whereby we don't even take it into consideration when we are dealing one to another on a normal basis? It's been used for too long. It's about time it got dropped. So even when the president did say yesterday that, you know what, let's not lie to each other, ukabila ndio inatusumbua, I don't think so. I don't think that's the problem. I think it's a tool that has been used until it has become normalized. And I think it's time to denormalize it and say that it is not something that Kenyans would be divided on. Let's look at the real issues. Look at the moral issues. Look at the systemic issues that continue to dog this country. Demand for better governance. Demand for proper development. Not all this nonsense that you're faced with every time an election is rolling around. And it's time to say that call these guys out for what they're truly doing. You know they're using the tool. Get them to drop the tool and pick up other ones that are actually going to develop the country in a way in which it should.
You know, when you talk about a tool providing a lasting solution to a problem that a country has, and what in effect you are saying is this: you criticize the tool and say it can't be the solution. In so doing, you imply that there is a solution that can be found. The solutions that we have, and this is where now the big lie is, there is no permanent solution to human problems per se. None. Politically speaking, there is none. What you have is a framework from which you can pursue the ideal goal of eliminating it. But it is a goal you're always pursuing. You never really quite get there. You reduce it to the point where, when you have structures like you call laws or the rule of law, when it's uncomfortable to disobey the law, it is outrightly perilous to your own livelihood and life to disobey the law, that's how you limit it. But as human beings, there will always be people who will break the law.
Yep.
There will always be people who will do the very thing that you may consider antisocial. But these tools, as we call them, are there to limit it. And the task of getting us to believe that these tools apply to us equally then usually is a problem. Because it's a problem in that those whom we entrust with the leadership, those whom we elect to represent us, unfortunately set a horrible example for us.
The thing, though, about this tribalism tool that has been used previously is that it has worked. And it's not in terms of finding a solution, but what it was meant to do was to divide. Divide, and what you see then in the middle is the leader who would essentially take all. That's what it has been used for. The solution was to place a particular individual at one place. Unfortunately, unintended consequences then have been that many Kenyans actually start to believe that they're tribal, whereby they're not. And so when an election comes about where a presidential seat is highly and hotly contested, then it comes out and the narrative that is spun is that Kenyans actually are tribal. And that's why we continue to have the problems that we do, especially when it comes to the ballot, especially when it comes to election. And I'm saying it's absolutely not true. It is not true. Sure, Kenya is made up of different tribes. However, I don't think the people are using that tool against themselves. I think that it has always been a tool that politicians and leaders have used to divide because they realize that it is emotive. But if you pull it apart and Kenyans sitting one to another, they are not tribal. Kenyans are not tribal.
Actually, humanity is tribal.
I believe that people have taken pride in where they come from and whom they are. I don't think that Kenyans would want to use it one to another to cause any kind of animosity amongst themselves, especially when it comes to choosing a leader. I think it's a narrative that has been spun, and I think that is something that is now resident in the minds of people. But if you pull it apart, you'll actually find that one person to the next doesn't have an issue with themselves.
Get ready, I want to differ with you here.
It's okay.
She says it's okay. You see, we are tribal, not in the negative ethnicity sense of the word. Not really. We, as human beings, will find groupings that suit us. Groupings, if you look at the homogeneous nature of groupings, it's the same tenets that also apply to what we consider ethnicity and what we're now referring to as tribal. You've heard me say this before. Our political class are a tribe. The industrial class are a tribe. The middle class are a tribe. They share many things in common. Those who are considered to be economically disadvantaged are a tribe. And it is that tribal sentiment that we've been hearing rearing its head when we've listened to the discussions around the dynasties versus the hustler. It's a tribal discussion. Now, when you say it has been used from time immemorial, you are right. But it removes you from the real tribal issue. And this is what the Deputy President has been preaching. That the issue isn't where you geographically come from or the linguistic inclination that you have because of your geographical beginnings. It's not that. He's been saying there's this larger picture of those who have and those who don't. Simply put, this isn't new either. Now, modern politics as we see it, because of the understanding that people have, those who aspire to a political seat will have to craft a narrative that suits their purposes. And I believe this is what you're discussing. And they use the tribal element in this country with the ethnic leaning to it and the negative ethnic sentiment to further their cause. And you know why? Because even now as we speak, we all take our bearing from a certain geographical location.
Yep. There'll be a family unit.
Yes.
There'll be a clan unit.
Yes.
You'll go all the way to your village,
Yes.
to the people. I mean, you belong somewhere.
You do.
And that has not, and that's why I'm saying that is not a problem. That is not our problem. But the problem that is being painted by our political leaders is that is our problem.
That isn't our problem.
That the way we think is our problem. Listen to this. Ethnic antagonism and competition. This is from the BBI report itself, which before the validation. Kenya is witnessing a continued deterioration of relationships between ethnic communities and political formations. These relationships are too often characterized by aggressive antagonism and competition. A strong nation cannot develop in this way. Now, when it comes to the issue of inclusivity, is where we also are told that inclusivity is one of the greatest challenges that Kenyans face. We as Kenyans have failed to appreciate our God-given differences in how we think, the languages we speak, the regions we come from, and the way we worship. We have failed to appreciate that we are as the fingers of one hand, weak alone and as strong as a fist when folded together. Our political system has been unable to respond to feelings of alienation in sections of our people. Now, listen. Have we failed? Have we failed to do all these things that we're being told we have failed? Because we are being told by this doctor that our problem is that we have failed as Kenyans to appreciate the God-given differences in how we think, the languages we speak, and the regions we come from, and the way we worship.
Who wrote that again?
We have failed to appreciate that we are as the fingers of the hand. Have we failed?
No, we haven't.
We have been told by our political leaders that this is a problem that we have failed. This is the proper manifestation of that, because this BBI report is basically coming to tell us, you know what, the political leaders are telling you that you have failed and therefore you need a solution. You need to be admitted, you need oxygen support, and in fact, you need to stay here for 6 months. This is what this doctor is saying. And I am saying absolutely not. I want a second and third opinion on this particular diagnosis. We have not failed. It's our leaders who have failed. It's our leaders who keep pushing this for their own benefit. Why is it that you would find, for example, in the city county of Nairobi, how many people would be saying, oh, Nairobi is whatever percentage Kikuyu, whatever percentage Luo, whatever percentage Kamba, and if you want to win the votes of Nairobi, you have to go to these people. How many votes did the governor of Nairobi County get?
800,000
Plus.
He's a Kamba. How many Kambas are there in Nairobi? Absolutely, very many more than the numbers that he got. How many votes did the senator of Nairobi get? Similar kind of number. How many lawyers voted for Johnson Sakaja? Very many more. How many people go today thinking, you know what, I voted for that Mukamba guy to be governor, and now you see, how many? Very few. But at the top, we are told, oh, you see, you've got to think, you've got to accommodate more people. We have absolute no tribal issue.
You know,
we are okay with the way we are. We look at one another, we see one another as Kenyans. Yes, we see one another as Luo, Kamba, Kisi, and we laugh and do all that. But when it comes to the political issue of ethnic antagonism, it is something that is propagated by politicians.
Then I must ask if there's no problem. I mean, I come from the place where I think that actually there is no problem, because if you look at societies that are tribal, what you're seeing right here in Kenya is child's play. It's nothing. It's nothing. Why then is it so easy? If people genuinely don't have a problem, why then is it so easy for that narrative to then take root, pay rent, and reside in the minds of people at some point?
This isn't rent, my dear. It's a long lease. Consider who are the leaders and where do they get their support from. See, the example that Eric has given is a very good example, and you'll find that example resonates in major towns in this country. Where you have a nice mishmash of communities, you'll find that is actually true. But then the bulk of the country, unfortunately, and with our geographical regions, the people who reside there will have a linguistic commonality, a cultural commonality. Now, many of the leaders we then have within our parliament, within the sphere, even when they ascend to the national level, unfortunately, that basic village thinking never really departs from their mind. It doesn't really move away. And because the majority, even when you think about, why did I begin what I was saying by giving a little chronology about, say, our origins? Do you really think that when people come to town, that they actually forsake they are bringing that they acquired in the rural setting? To understand this, just look at the exodus from this town, Nairobi city. Every Friday, just look at the exodus. But if you don't look at the exodus, I wish the night traveling was still, and look at the number of buses that leave daily. Daily. We have a very strong attachment to
where you're from.
Yes. Now that, and this one Eric is spot on, this is what is actually harvested by the politician. Because many people don't come to town to stay. They come to work and eventually to go back home.
So what I am saying is that then the people of Kenya should be able to reject that narrative. But it has always been...
No.
Hold on. It has always been something that the politicians have been able to use. They've been able to use this tool over and over again to divide people. We've seen bitter, horrible fracas that has come about because of elections, and it was said to be about against tribal lines. When I came to Kenya, all I heard is that the majority of the Kenyan population felt disadvantaged because the Kikuyu were always in a position whereby they could glean in terms of harvest, in terms of plum positions and plum government positions. That has been the narrative that has been spun. If that is the case, and if that is the case, that it has been merely used as a tool by politicians, Kenyans then should be able to reject the narrative moving forward.
Please understand that our politics revolves around leadership that are communal and regional. Please understand. Just start there.
Yep.
So, if you're a politician and you want a narrative that will propel you, what narrative are you going to use? A narrative that will galvanize you. Now, the narrative you're speaking of is a narrative that focuses on the fault being directed to one community and saying it is their fault. The problems you have are because of this. It is something that human beings do all the time. The politician has just perfected it in this country. All right? Now, there's something that must be said and must be looked at in all honesty. The Kikuyu are an enterprising group of people, and not because they set out to be enterprising, they were forced into enterprise. Why don't we go into that break and then we can continue?
Let's take a break now, yes, at 24 and a half minutes past 7 o'clock. This is the situation room in Kenya's biggest. Is tribalism, ethnic antagonism, it's a big issue in this country? And I'm saying, no. The problem is a lack of honest leadership. Comments coming in on social media, Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Spanner says, in 2009 I was removed in the list of enumerators because I was a Luo. Later I applied for a job and the reference also that all names can lead to the higher Luo. When searching for a house, one landlord told me, I read that comment because it's a reality of very many people around the country. Where is the origin? What's the origin of that kind of
This situation that we now...
This situation that we have. It is the honesty of leadership, that's what I'm saying. Let's take a break. Vice Chairman KTM for production.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Next week on the Great Kenyan Bake Off.
Come on now. Please don't burn.
The bakers from Heat 2 are back in the tent for their own biscuit week.
And I'm hoping for the best.
The bakers struggle with some tacky technicals
Hard to please millionaires.
and produce some show-stopping creations. Tune in to find out whose biscuits will snap
Come on.
and whose cookies will crumble.
Beautiful. I love it.
I would like a whole bag of those.
The Great Kenyan Bake Off, brought to you by Unga Limited, inspiring a nation to bake.
It has been a tough year for your business, hasn't it? But you hung in there. You pressed on. You persevered. And now it's time to rise up. It's time to get ready, to get going, to get selling. And Google is here to help you rise up. Get free training and tools to help your businesses adapt and grow online. Visit g.co/Grow Africa to start now.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
Next week on the Great Kenyan Bake Off.
Come on now. Please don't burn.
The bakers from Heat 2 are back in the tent for their own biscuit week.
And I'm hoping for the best.
The bakers struggle with some tacky technicals
Hard to please millionaires.
and produce some show-stopping creations. Tune in to find out whose biscuits will snap
Come on.
and whose cookies will crumble.
Beautiful. I love it.
I would like a whole bag of those.
The Great Kenyan Bake Off, brought to you by Unga Limited, inspiring a nation to bake.
The weather with
Mostly
Spice
cloudy conditions in
FM.
Nairobi at 16. We see a high of 23 today and a chance of wet afternoon. And in Nyeri, cloudy conditions at 16, highs of 21. Nakuru State, mostly cloudy at the moment. Rains expected later with highs of 22. The high will be 21 in Eldoret, with rains in the afternoon. Currently mostly cloudy at 14. Cloudy, Kisumu at 21, highs of 26 and lows of 19. Rains coming down anytime now. Omega will follow soon. Highs of 23 and lows of 16. In Mombasa, it's partly cloudy at 26, highs of 20. We're at 19 degrees, it's cloudy. Thunderstorms are in the forecast, 24 and 30 high in Arizona State. It's mostly sunny in Johannesburg at 16, 27 and lows of 15, rain expected. 31 will be the high in Lagos at cloudy.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice it.
Spice up your life.
Okay, so
Traffic.
let's take a look at how this may have changed on the roads this morning. Thika Road still giving up those vibes all the way then from Allsops today. Moving slowly bumper-to-bumper situation right around the Pangani underpass. Then thereafter, it's a little bit smooth, but still a traffic situation. Bumper-to-bumper on the Mombasa Road, and from the SGR all the way to Kamangas and then out. So General Motors is moving very, very slowly at this point. Expect it now. And then as you get towards the National roundabout, also slow. Kiambu Road. I don't know what folks are doing here today, but it's not moving. 6 lanes now. 6, just like that. It is elephant. Get out of that one. So just to let you know that what's ahead. Spice of MKE. Talk to us on Twitter or text us.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
7:30. This is
94.4 Spice FM.
Broadcasting on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online. This and every morning in the room, you have Eric Latif, CT Muga, and Ndu Oko. So why am I saying that our problem is a lack of honest leadership? Just give you a couple of examples. A big part of the BBI report has proposals on things that the government can do in terms of policy just to expand the cake and to alleviate the suffering of very many. For example, look at what the BBI is proposing for the youth. The holiday from repayment of education loans, the tax holiday once you started your enterprise for a number of years, all those kind of support that can be given to the youth. So far, we've had very many years of the Youth Enterprise Development Fund that has been run by the government. We've had very many years. We've had a couple of years of what was then, other funds that have been brought in to support women, to support youth, to get into business. If you look at the management of those funds and the scandals surrounding those funds and then the resolution to the scandals surrounding those funds, you ask yourself, where is the gap? What's the missing link? Look at the issue of devolution. Devolution has been hailed as, yes, it's working. And the parts that are not working are the parts where we're talking about pilferage, graft, money that has been allocated and earmarked for a certain purpose and it's not used for that purpose. Who's in charge of that? It's the leadership. If we look at why then we even talk about increasing from the current percentage, or it got to a point where it was 23%, it has gone back into, there are those that argue, the budget experts tell us, currently the budget allocation to the county is about 16 or to 18% of the current national budget. But really, why can't we get to 35? Why can't we get to 30? Why do we have a push and pull between the national government and the county governments for so many years? It's about the transfer of functions. Functions have been transferred by the constitution to counties, but the national government is holding on to those functions through the use of parastatals. There are parastatals that are doing the job that should be done by county governments, or at least even devolve the parastatals so they work with the county governments. That is not working. So the 35% could have really gone to the counties a long time ago. It's not going. If you look at what we are now talking about, expanding the executive, looking at the structure of government, some of these things were proposed by a committee of experts. Some of these things were proposed by other experts in the CKRC. When it goes to Naivasha, we have referred to this many times as what happened in Naivasha. It's the Naivasha scandal. Politicians went to Naivasha to look at what has been produced by the Committee of Experts on Constitution Review in 2010 with their harmonized draft, and they came out of it with some political settlements. Why? Because they were not being sincere. And the conversation then happens all around this time is, why did the politicians change this? It's because certain politicians felt that the provisions that were pushing through would benefit them. Now, those politicians are feeling that the provisions that they pushed through that have been taken up in the Constitution are not working for them. Why? Lack of honest leadership. If we had leadership that sits back and says, this is what we are supposed to do, let us do the best we can to implement this constitution, and then go to the people and say, you know what, we tried to implement this constitution, we were unable. If members of parliament had come to us and said, the solution that we have to attaining the gender balance in the two houses of parliament is a constitutional amendment, and this is the proposal that we have put forth, and this is a proposal that we want to bring to you, the people of Kenya, in the form of a referendum for this constitutional amendment, would be having a conversation. But now they keep telling us, oh, no, you can never achieve these. These are Kenyans. They don't vote women. That's what we're being told now. Lack of honest leadership. This is what is our problem as a country today.
But I think the example you've given about voting for women, that isn't a falsehood. Many of our communities have enormous difficulty. I mean, you're giving it as an example, but they have enormous difficulty in voting for women. Somehow they can't envision a situation where women would actually be in positions of leadership.
That is true.
But what this gender parity that was proposed in our constitution does, it forces a conversation that other people may not necessarily want to have.
That is it.
I think what he's saying is that if you see as a leader then the importance, for example, of having a woman or having a balanced representation, women in government as well, and if we're really honest about the importance of such, then there would be much more done in terms of advocacy to get these who then vote along these patriarchal lines or who have these ideas so inherently entrenched in their minds that women are no better than staying in the kitchen or pregnant or whatever. How much advocacy has been done to get them to understand and see the benefit of having women sharing? If you were honest to say that truly we actually agree and we know that there's a significant contribution that half the percentage of the population can make being women. And you know that on this side, there are people who have this cultural, traditional belief that women cannot, because it's what they know. How much work has been done to get them to see the other side?
Actually,
I think they play on this traditional belief most often, and they say, well, people are not going to vote because, you know, they don't believe women can actually get the job done, or they don't believe that is the role that women should. Exactly, they don't believe the role that women should actually possess this role.
That's a falsehood.
There's nothing that has been done, or at least not even sufficiently done, to get people to see the other side of reality.
No, a lot has been done, and if you consider this particular thinking, it was manifested in something as simple as the education of a girl child. That was overcome. In that, women will get employment in this country almost on an equal footing, I've used the word almost, as men. It's progress. But then there are situations where you see the word affirmative or the phrase affirmative action, the things that have to be nudged. If you wait for it to go through the natural process, it'll take forever. So certain things, you just say, this one, and that's where the Constitution was right.
And that's where leadership comes in.
Yes.
The role of nudging is given to the leaders. The people of Kenya, with their very many voices and languages, came together and said, all right, so we have heard the issue of women in leadership, and we would like that to be fine. We can make this an ideal. How do we attain this ideal? We leave it to our political leaders to come up with a proposal, bring it to us and show us how we can attain this ideal.
Does it point to the fact that...
Sell it to the people and tell them, this is how we can achieve this. What do the political leaders do? They come back to us and tell us, but you're the problem. You're the ones who don't elect women.
So our representative system is faulty. Because, you know, when you say the leaders, what is equally true is that, I mean, it is true, it's a failure of leadership, but these fellows unfortunately tend to mirror who we also are badly. They mirror the worst aspects of our being or of our existence. When something is tolerated, it means that most people have no strong objection towards it. Now, there was something I was saying before we went on to the break. Remember, all these things are subject to progress. That's what change does. If we look back at independence, how many Kenyans even understood that they could, as native Kenyans, own shops? It was assumed certain functions belong to certain communities, certain jobs belong to certain communities. Even when we had educated Africans taking over jobs that previously had been held by white people, by Goans, by Kenyans of Asian origin, even when this happened, it took time for that to settle in. What am I saying? I am saying that given the number of years that we've had our independence, there are certain things that you cannot now pussyfoot over. You know why? All these negative things you're saying just keep getting entrenched. You see what you are discussing? what people react towards is what they perceive as what you call crony capitalism, where a small group of people just sort of like share the cake among themselves. Now, if your leader, a leader whose origins are from your community, is in place, what receives the sharp focus are people who also come from that background. They're seen more than anybody else. Other factors will not be considered. What will not be considered is, for instance, the population of these people. How many are they really? If you're talking about Nairobi, what is the proximity of this rural area of theirs to Nairobi? Because what is the literacy rate? All these questions come into being. And then you ask the most important questions. Are there other communities in this particular government that also share these things? Do we see them? Now, we've had the Public Service Commission doing the numbers every so often. And the numbers don't actually point to what politically is believed to be true. Not always. It doesn't. It tells you that there are certain government offices, certain government departments where you'll find not the community you thought was most dominant, but another community. And usually, it trails back to who the boss, not is currently, was at a certain point in time when people were employed. The port, for the longest time, the port of Mombasa, was headed by people whose ethnic background was Luo land. So the stevedores, the people who managed cargo and handled cargo, we found very many of them came from the western part of the country. Now, there are those who argued that this was because it was hard, back-breaking work and that the locals didn't want to do that work. Now, you see, this is where falsehoods creep in. Because you don't find them in large numbers doesn't mean they're not able to do the job or that they don't want to do the job. That's not it. But you see, the narrative that will come out is the dominance. And if you look at the employment portfolio of people who worked there, again, you saw the numbers favored a certain community at a certain point in time. Now, this, unfortunately, is a reality which, when you throw the peppering of politics into, paints a truly ugly picture. Because what it then tells you is that there are these people who are dominating us. Yeah. That's the language that comes into play. And then when you throw this into politics, now, this is where now you have what another term comes to mind. It's called pork barrel politics. All right? Where you find resources now are now deemed to be allocated to favor a certain group or a certain ethnicity. You have this situation long enough and there isn't a narrative to counter it, then the simplest narrative comes into play. These people are always taking an advantage over the rest of us. No one bothers to ask, but we also have leaders. And now with devolution, we also have money in our counties. So it's not as though money is going to one county. We also have money. What are these leaders who are from our ethnic backgrounds and who speak the languages? What are they doing with these resources that we have? That question isn't asked. We simply go back to that old narrative of this particular community and these people are the ones who are dominating.
And that's what I'm saying is that you need to get to that point. The catapult needs to get to that point where now Kenyans are asking the questions and saying, why is it that we are still being shackled by this age-old narrative?
Because they don't see it. They don't see it as being shackled.
Now they need to, because that exactly is what is
actually
happening. Kenyans actually need to see it's a problem.
Because we've been told, because the narrative has been sold by those who occupy the spaces and the headlines, that this is the problem.
No, just because you've been told something
when
over
a report
and over
like
and
this is
over
worded
again.
this way and says that we have failed to recognize who we are as a people, we have failed to appreciate the God-given differences in how we think and how the languages that we speak and the regions that we come from and the way we worship, we have failed to appreciate that we are as the fingers of one hand. We are weak alone and we are strong as a fist when we come together. When we are told, when it's pushed this way, when you're told that you have failed to come together because you are Luo and you are Kikuyu and you are Taita and you are Mijikenda, when you're told that, it sort of starts becoming the norm.
But Eric, you have to accept
and when
it.
the solution,
it isn't entirely false.
When the solution to this
I'm not saying it's
issue,
false. I'm saying, must it be accepted?
No, you don't have
it
to.
doesn't have to be
we
accepted.
have not failed. I am saying it is false. No, we have not failed to appreciate who we are
so
as
now,
a people.
If Kenyans know that narrative is false, if Kenyans know that they have not failed, my question is, even if you have been told 1,000 times over and you know that the opposite is the truth, why continuously accept it?
What do you
stand up
how
and
do you, how
say?
do you, how do you define failure? If not what you're describing. We continuously follow this thing. We continue. Is that not failure?
Failure to accept.
It's failure all round. Just think about it.
What we have failed to do is we have failed to recognize that we are being lied to. We have failed to appreciate that the problem is not what we are being told is the problem, but the problem is
It's something else.
Is the person telling us. What
Actually,
the problem
I
is.
don't think that the Mwananchi has failed to understand they're being lied. They know they're being lied to. I sincerely believe they're being lied to. They know.
So you know that somebody is
They
lying.
know.
So you know that somebody is lying to you over and
Yes.
over
Yes.
and over again.
Yes.
And they still leave this trail of breadcrumbs.
Yes.
And over again you continue to follow them. What does that mean?
Yes.
But City, so you
Why
know you're
follow
being
them?
lied to,
Yes.
and
You
therefore
know
you
you're being
accept
lied
to
to and you
go
still
and
accept to continue being lied to.
to go
Yes.
and kill,
Yes.
a neighbor, to go and kill a friend, somebody
Yes,
who was your
yes,
friend.
yes,
You
yes,
know
yes.
that somebody is splitting you one
Yes.
against the other.
Yes.
And then you agree to go and kill your
Yes.
neighbor. You agree to dissent.
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
Why?
Because that narrative resonates with what you yourself want to believe. That's why it doesn't go away. Because to accept this truth, it would mean that you accept the responsibility for your own failures, the things you haven't done. It is a lot easier to blame someone else. It's infinitely easier to blame everything that hasn't worked for you on someone else.
Then
it is
Kenyans
much
don't
easier.
want, if what you're saying is true, then Kenyans don't want a better Kenya.
They do want a better Kenya, but probably what
Not
I would
badly
argue...
enough.
Oh, they do actually.
Not badly enough.
Please understand, you're talking about a narrative that has lasted for the longest possible time, all right? And it isn't as though throughout that time everything has been terrible. COVID has just brought us face to face with the reality that we may not have wanted to face, and it's an opportunity. But prior to that opportunity, you ask the question, why do they believe? Because they hope. There's always hope that something will work out of this, something good will work out. There's always hope.
And this is where the failure is in the lack of leadership. You see, if they emerged honest leadership and said, you know what, guys, what we are blaming as the problem is really not what we should be focusing on. This is not where our focus should be. Our focus should be on something else. A leadership that brings people together, not by saying that now, because we are very tribal, because let's be honest with ourselves, we are very, very tribal, we are going therefore to have an expanded executive, is a leadership that focuses and says, we need to work together as a country, and this is what the government should be doing for the people of Kenya across the country. And this is how we shall resolve our issues across the country. And it doesn't matter who is speaking to you from this podium today, or next year, or 50 years from today. That person is Kenyan. That person will not be. You know, even the president himself said, and he said, I admit I have also played a part in that. I've played a part in pushing that ethnic antagonism. I've played a part in advancing and advocating that narrative. He said it himself, the president. This is where the problem comes in. If, for example, the president says, yes, this is it, and let's all stop, and every solution that we are addressing should not be from that lens of what we do. Should not be from that lens of how we are campaigning. We campaign and we say, you know, these ones, leave these people alone. And so therefore, these people are the ones that we shall have a negotiation with on how they occupy this space when we win an election. If that's not the conversation we'll be having, we'll be moving forward. Right now, the conversation we're having is, let's expand the executive so that because we have failed to acknowledge who we are as a people, we can then have more people at the top and they represent us.
Compensate at the top and not deal with the problem.
No.
And not deal with the problem. Deal with the problem. The degeneration. Deal with the dishonesty. Deal with the systemic issues.
You're being
with
prescriptive.
The problem.
Okay, how? Let me ask the question.
Necessary.
How?
It's necessary.
You see, take this perspective, all right? What you're saying is true. But ask yourself, what sort of atmosphere, what sort of situation do you need to have in order for what you're saying to work? Because, as Eric has put it eloquently and truly, this is the way Kenyans think now. How do you get them to the point where they can listen to this alternative narrative which is true?
Showing by example.
Precisely. Now,
example is the best teacher.
Now,
if for instance we said that among the things that we want to do is Look at our structure, our constitution, our electoral system. Martha Karua spoke to us yesterday and she talked about electoral injustice. The feeling that there is injustice after the vote. Because it's not before the vote, it's not during the ballot.
It's after
It
the
is
results.
with the results and how the whole system is conducted. If we go to a point where instead of saying that then we shall bring in the politician as the owner of the referee, we said let's ensure that this IEBC is truly independent. That is one way.
You know,
that is one way.
The shoe
because
is
I've
the,
always,
the shoe is in
I've
the other foot
always
here.
advocated here and said that for as long as politicians have a say on who is at the helm of the IEBC, we shall always have this issue. There'll always be people who will be coming out to say, but you see this guy, he looks like he went to the
Eric,
other side.
politicians will always have a say. It's a question of how much say they have. They always will have a say. So long as we've given them that legislative authority of determining certain things, they will always have a say.
We need to remove those kind of things, and that's what I say. I keep advocating for that. First of all, politicians have got to this point where they have sold this narrative that they are the most important stakeholder in an election, and yet they are not. The most important stakeholder in an election is the voter. A politician is a player in an election. They are being chosen by the voter. Why is it that then the politician is the one who determines the date of the election? The politician is the one who will determine the person who shall conduct the election. The politician is the one who shall determine how much the person who shall conduct the election will have as budgetary allocation. Why?
Why are you blaming the politician for the ineptitude of the voter?
For what?
Because the politician comes from amongst the voter. He is part of that community. He's part of that setup. He presents or she presents, they present themselves to be voted for from among people who they think will believe what they're saying and vote for them. And yet these are people who actually ought to know them well. So now, when they get elected, and then sometimes they get elected again, and they're telling you the same thing, and you have evidence that they hadn't done what you've done. Now, how am I going to blame the politician? That's not the politician's fault. And it isn't even dumb luck. It is a failing on my part as the voter to actually do what I need to do. But is it really a failure? Now, the point I was trying to make earlier on was it isn't a failure. It's called an adjustment. The voter adjusts. And the adjustment is manifested in what the voter demands before the election. The voter figures this guy is never going to do anything for us. So we are going to make sure this person spends money. Now, it's not that you think the voter doesn't know 500 shillings cannot last a year. They know. You think the voter doesn't know 1,000 shillings will not last a year? They know. But they have brought the expectations to the level of the 50 shillings, the 100 shillings, the 500 shillings, the 1,000 shillings. This is what he will give me. I will get it. Then I will get on with my life. Should other things come, well, we'll see. But I'm not waiting for it. But the moment they present themselves, I want mine in advance.
You have agreed with me what I'm saying then, CT.
This one you need to explain to me. How have I agreed with you?
It is because of that lack of honest leadership that the voter has gotten to a point where they have despaired.
And they become
No,
complacent.
this isn't.
And they've adjusted.
It's not despair.
Adjustments.
That adjustment
adjustments
is
to what
despair.
you are seeing in front of you. It's
That
like,
is
okay,
not
this is the
despair.
best. It's the best that I'm going to get, so I might as well get it now because I don't know what I will be
That's
able
a flexible
to get
negotiating
tomorrow.
mind. It's not
positive.
despair.
It's not positive.
No.
It is not positive.
That adjustment is adjustment to what?
Adjustment to self-benefit. Because you may think it's meager, but that's what they feel they should get.
But why are you adjusting to that self-benefit? Adjusting from what?
Because
to
you've
that
understood that
self-benefit?
whatever else this person is promising, you will never get.
Despair.
Nope. Adjustment.
Occasioned by despair, City.
Despair would mean you actually, let me explain despair the way I understand it. Despair would mean you don't give a damn, you don't bother, you don't even vote. But the excitement and the activity around an election indicates the complete opposite.
But here,
People
you're
aren't
saying,
despairing.
Yes, you're saying here that your whole reason for participating in this election is no longer to elect a leader.
It's to get what you can
It
get
is to
at
get
some
what you
point,
can get.
and then you move on.
Yes.
It is a trade.
And to get
It
it,
is
you need this
transactional.
activity.
It is transactional.
Yes, it
so
is.
you've given up on the whole issue of
why you were having an
Why
election
you
in the
have an
first
election.
place.
No.
Or why you're choosing leaders.
You've
Because
adjusted.
if you're going to, no,
Nope,
if you're
you
going
haven't
to,
given
if you're
up.
going to be involved in this process, to be able to get what you can get, you've left the initial point of why this process was instituted. You've left it behind.
No.
To put in position a leader who will be able to govern you in the right direction. group of people to develop your country for 1, 2, 3. But if you're saying I'm going to be involved in this process so that I can get 1,000 children, I'm going to go vote and join yourself in this frenzy, just so that I can get what I can get and then we move forward, they've lost.
Let's take a break for
No.
at home at 5 minutes to 8 o'clock. It's a situation. It's going to be a conversation. We want to take a break. We're live on Spice FM and KTN Home. I will be back shortly. All right, many comments also coming in on our social media this morning. Sample some of them, Ndu.
Okay, so Becky says, do you want to know what is wrong with Kenya? Look at Kiambu Road. We would move faster and safer. But everybody wants to be first, be ahead and be damned to the other guy. Eric Latif, during desperate times, even if the devil disguises himself as the Messiah and people will follow, we are enlightened. But the leadership keeps us in a position where we always need them. Sijui kama hiyo ndio divide and rule. Kenyans don't have tribal issues, really, according to Gordon. CT, stop simplifying the issue. The leaders have a very big say in shaping public opinion, and that's the naked truth, according to Julia. Mzee Kijaluba says, yes, we started on a wrong footing. The lates of Oginga Odinga and Jomo Kenyatta, because they believed theirs were big tribes and formed Kano. To date, everything politically revolves around this thinking. In fact, BBI is simply an attempt to accommodate the betrayed pacts and more big tribes, at least 5. The answer is yes. Robert Cheriot says, yes, it is. And the founding fathers brought this nation up this way. That when we elect Mtuwetu, our lives will change. Now it's time to use this tribalism positively, and we can do it.
All right, so the issue is Kenya really ethnically antagonized? Ethnic antagonism, is that our big problem? Are we really that tribal, or is it about a failure by electoral leaders, our political leaders? This is what we're asking. Thank you very much for all your comments on our social media handles, Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We call you our Twitter birds. Asante sana. So, as we conclude on this particular topic for today and the issue that we're discussing now, I still want to stand and say, if we had honest leaders who would say this, the problem that we have, for example, is we have an electoral system that makes us feel as if we didn't get justice. 1. 2, we have a group of politicians who feel entitled that because of participating in this election, then I should get recognized. Whether I win or not, I should get recognition. 3, our problems as a country are on what is needed to develop us as a nation, not on what is needed to accommodate a few individuals who shall be called representatives of their tribes. It is how we shall bring the country together by developing every part of this country. To use the president's words, irregardless of who is in office. City?
You know, we'll never stop talking about this issue because the problems that bedevil us are not going to end because we have a new constitution or because everybody goes to some religious or subscribe to some religious belief. Human problems don't end that way. What we want is a situation where the vast majority of our people enjoy these rights that are enshrined in our constitution. And you're talking about economic, you're talking about social, you're talking about all these rights that they have. Now, unfortunately, the politicians is the one who makes the decisions about many of these things. The laws, how they should be implemented. And then we have a different class of people called the civil servant who implement these things. Why I brought in crony capitalism and pork barrel politics into it is because, unfortunately, we have a situation in this country where the civil servant, who is supposed to be our buffer, and the politicians join hands. And then they throw in the industrialists and the businesses. So if you are going to point fingers at these 3 groups of people. Because it's that combination that brings about what we are discussing. Those, some have the money, those who are meant to actually implement, then those who are supposed to legislate. So the common man indeed finds himself not at crossroads. in a deep, dark well. That's where we find ourselves. And that is
By
a situation.
himself.
Yes, and that is a situation.
The lost voice.
Yes. And in that situation, Eric, what and where you are right, that one, it is tribeless. When these people coalesce to do their thing, it is tribeless. This ethnicity that is based on geographical locations and similarity of languages, no, that doesn't fit.
Kenya's biggest conversation continues in the next hour. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Wow, Mombasa Road today is crazy. Outbound is crazy. There is so much traffic that it's affecting traffic in and outbound today. So there's heading towards the direction of the airport. Construction right outside Plaza 2000. It's causing a tailback all the way past Bellevue, right? If you're headed outbound, inbound to the CBD as well, it's more than bumper to bumper where we're looking at it now. So if you're getting towards Mombasa Road, just know that it's going to be one for the books today. It's not moving as much as we would like it to. So this one is going to need some patience, guys. Kiambu Road, we also see the same thing. It's a mishmash of jam and no butter today. It is not moving smoothly at all. Hey, okay. So if you're stuck and you're looking for an alternate, I don't think you're going to find one on Mombasa Road today or on Thika Road either. Not at the moment. Where it is moving smoothly though is on the eastern and southern bypasses to and from Thika Road and Mombasa Road and out then towards Langata Road. So that one looks like it's okay. If you find an alternate route somehow, let us know. Spice them or text us. What's wrong?
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, it's 2 minutes after 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, right here on Spice FM, on KTN Home, and online. As we begin this new hour, C.T. Muga, what is today's proverb?
A fool has to say something. A wise person has something to say.
A fool has to say something. A wise person has something to say. Okay. All right. So, Ndu, let's look at what was said yesterday and what it meant at Bomas of Kenya.
Sure. A lot of people during the launch of the BBI report yesterday at the Bomas had a lot of things to say. Many leaders came in giving their support, and it would be clear that those who came in support of the BBI, it could be imagined that they also gave their direct support to the president. They gave their direct support to the presidency as well. We had very many people talk about very many different things, and leaders from the chairman of the Council of Governors to the governor for Kitui to Mudavadi himself, who talked about issues. And one of the things that did impress me is that issues came out. We didn't see a huge play on personality politics as we normally do in a thing like this. But what we saw was about issues that Kenyans actually are taking a point on now and are saying something needs to be done about these particular things. We also did see what a lot of people would have called the choir singing and coming together and, giving praise in terms of hallelujah for the BBI report. Until then, we saw the deputy president, in no uncertain terms, coming out and saying, look, There are things that I take issue with. And not just do I take issue with them, but I am here representing a significant percentage of Kenyans who are taking issue with this. It would be that he used this platform to voice many of the things that people had been inferring for the last few months. On what position the deputy president is actually taking on things of development in the country, of things of whether there was a divide between himself and the president, and came out and said, look, there's a lot of convincing that you need to do for me. But it was very interesting because he said, I am not sold. And I'm standing here representing a number of people who are also not sold on this thing. That here we are at this point in our lives talking about issues that people have taken up and said, look, we have a problem with development in this country. We have a problem because we don't have. And we are not seen as part of the creme de la creme of people who would be recognized in this country. So it was interesting because you saw a divide in terms of what people were saying. On one side, you saw that, especially when people like Mudavadi spoke, and he talked about the debt issue. He talked about the judiciary and its independence or lack thereof. He talked about the fact that, you need to bring some things into reform. On the other side, you saw people who came out and praised this report and praised the BBI and this initiative and said, you know what, this is exactly what we need to solve the problems that Kenya has. And then finally, you saw the very clear side that came from the president, deputy president, whereby, look, I have very many issues with this thing. I need a second and third opinion. And guess what? I represent a number of Kenyans who also feel the same way, but don't have an opportunity and a platform as I do now. And I am not giving up this opportunity to talk about it. Right? So I think it was interesting, whereby it could just have been seen as a day whereby the report was being launched. But what it was is that it gave rise for you to see exactly where your leaders stand.
If you look at the leaders that stood up to speak, many of them were, very, very sober in how they, gave their opinion on the report. There are those then that came out to say, you know what, forget about everything else. Just the usual politics. This thing, it's a very good thing. Let's go ahead and vote for it because it represents a new Kenya. This is a moment like no other. This is what Moses Wetangula said yesterday. This is a day like no other. And then there are those that came out to say, all right, so it is a good document. Perhaps there are things that could still be reviewed. I don't know what opportunities then there would be for review beyond this, maybe going to Parliament and having it amended, or maybe just having the technical team also listening to the views again. I don't know. But there are those that came out to say that. What the Deputy President came out to do yesterday as well was basically voicing the concerns that have been voiced by various people in public. The issue of the judiciary and the ombudsman being appointed by the president directly. The issue of the police service commission being replaced by a council to be headed by the CS or the minister in charge of security. The issue of the expanded executive and the others that he was expressing. These are things that have been said by others. But because it was Ruto standing there, speaking about this, it came out strongly that this is Ruto saying no to this document. And at some point, it stopped being a feedback platform by Ruto, but it became now the politics of, this is Ruto talking, no. What is Ruto trying to show? He's trying to come and show us that this whole thing is nonsense. It's not worthwhile. So it turned political at that point. But let's listen to what some of the leaders said. This is what the ANC leader, Musalia Mudavadi, said, especially on the issue of debt, which he said is his campaign platform.
Good provisions of increasing 15% to 35% will require resources. If the debt consumes too much of our resources, we shall again fail to serve the counties. That is critical. I think the articles that have been touched tend to remove or to downgrade the role of Senate when it comes to allocation of resources to the counties. Senate is the anchor to devolution. I think that requires a review, not a rejection of the document.
There you go. So this is one leader who was saying, okay, so there's some areas of concern here which we feel as the ANC of concern. And there are people who are, yes, even clapping.
Looking at devolution itself, and just point out he seems to have been over the last few weeks very sober in his thinking then and submission of certain issues, and he's never stayed away from this debt issue, and said that as a country, where is Kenya really heading then when it comes to how much you actually spend and what you can see from this expenditure? Is it actually moving Kenya forward? Must Kenya not be careful about the direction in which it's going when we're looking at debt? And he's been consistent on this. If anything, he has been extremely consistent. What he did say and talk about the fact that the Senate then is the anchor for devolution. So if you're reducing the powers essentially that Senate would have, what does that mean for this same devolution upon which you anchor the development of the country just a few years ago? It was very interesting because he said, we're not saying throw the whole thing out, but there are certain things within this initiative that you really have to look at. Because if you bring in new provisions, what you're essentially doing is negating decisions that you had made before that seem to have taken this country to another level. It came out from Mandela also yesterday, where he said, you know what? When this whole thing began, we could count the issues and the matters of development that you could see within Mandera County.
Mm-hmm.
Between then and now, it's so much more that we can't even begin to enumerate. Seeing the benefits then of devolution, now bringing in a Senate that would be less powerful would then reduce that development that you see around the country, which is what devolution was supposed to have done in the first place. So coming from Mudavadi then, it would be that, we're not saying throw it out. We're saying review it so that you don't take backward steps on what you had previously succeeded on.
But you see, this is the thing. This is the beauty of the BBI. In the absence of the BBI, where would we have been hearing these discussions? Where would it have come out? You see, if we want to look at the BBI, let's look at it from the lenses of our constitution. Many people who have opposed the BBI have said that instead of a BBI, why don't we just implement what we already have in the constitution and see how far that takes us? But it brings in the question, why the reluctance to actually implement the constitution as it is? There's another side question. Must you implement all of it before you can question it? That I'm not going into. I'm just asking the question. If you ask me, it is because of the partisan way that our politics has presented itself. My opinion. The political situation that we have, that seems to be the focus of discussion, the top-heavy, the division of spoils at the top there. If you ask me, it's a political platform from which there is the indication, not necessarily the proof, that this cake can actually be shared, and the cake sharing perspective is what gives the atmosphere and the platform from which the discussions that we're talking about, all these things can take place. Because in the absence of that, so long as if it's bipartisan, it can work. If it's partisan, we will be exactly where we've always been. Someone will say this, the other will say the other. All these things we're discussing, we can even implement them. We can even say they're in law. The implementation, that thing can take a turn that will surprise you. If something as simple as what we call Chapter 6, something that you thought is fairly straightforward, that thing has been resisted in more ways than you can actually imagine. Every aspect of our constitution that doesn't favor certain groupings has been resisted. Why? Because the moment one group says this, politically speaking, another one will throw a wrench into it immediately. Now, I'm not saying this is a solution. I am saying there are things which may not provide a solution, but they provide the beginning of a discussion that can bring about a solution.
You see, what the president also said is that there are many sideshows, and when you say, it brings up the conversation of where are we? Let's take stock of our constitution, where we are. Let's take stock of our country, where we are. Let's take stock of our development and our politics and our lives, where we are right now as a country. If that was the way the BBI conversation had happened, then we'd be at a very good place, because we'd be discussing issues from a very honest point of view. We'll be discussing issues from a solution-oriented point of view. However, we have been distracted by very many issues. Listen to what the president said, and also the opposition leader.
There are too many sideshows that are detracting us from where we there are too many sideshows that are detracting us from where we want to go, that are stopping this country from being that great country that our forefathers saw it to be. And I believe that together we can achieve it.
We said we want to bequeath a better society for the coming generation of our country. It is not about making Uhuru Kenyatta a prime minister or Raila Odinga a president. And Raila Odinga has never declared, and I want to tell this.
Sideshows. Distracted by sideshows, that every other conversation that we're having is then overtaken by these sideshows. But at the same time, let's also face the truth that these sideshows are also created so that they can distract us from what really the conversation should look like. The conversation so far should have been, all right, 10 years of the Constitution. What aspects have we implemented? What aspects have we not implemented? And the question that you asked, why the reluctance to implement that Constitution? That is a conversation that we should be having. And then those that are unable to implement that would be coming back to say, you know what, if I implement this, then I'll go against this other provision. If I go ahead with implementation of this, I will then be going against this ideal, or it'll have this kind of drawback. That is not the conversation that we've had. We've had sideshows. We've had this whole narrative of, it's about 2022. It's about sharing the cake. It's about placing certain people in political office. It's about the president not retiring. The president has said many times that, you know what, I am going to retire. I will no longer be president. He said this many times, but no. We keep getting distracted. Why is it that we can't just have an honest and straightforward conversation about, if it was about, 10 years of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, why can't we just have that conversation?
There's so many hands in the pot, unfortunately, and what is happening is that it's souring the stew. And whereby there's an advantage, as crazy as it sounds, there's an advantage to keeping the people occupied with what you think is the show, but that is really not what the main show is. Look at what happens in a circus. There's the stage, but there's so many things that are happening outside there. Somebody's blowing fire, somebody's throwing balls up in the air, but there's the main attraction that's on the stage. But all these other people are trying to get the attention of the crowd at the same time. Whereas you should be focusing on what is really going on the stage. And I think for too long, Kenyans have been distracted by what the issues really are. And I think here presents a beautiful opportunity for Kenyans to actually begin to make demands. Now, it would appear that you're saying make demands and go out into the street. No. But even demands in your mind as to the kind of leadership you really want. Because I've said it before, and I continue to say that once you hear leaders saying the things that they say, please believe them. They're not telling you something aside from what they believe. They're not trying to point you into a direction that's different. So if somebody says that I'm actually going to do something so that to keep you encapsulated in that whole idea for the longest period of time, what I'm actually telling you is that I'm deceiving you. I'm not being honest. I'm not telling you the truth about what I really want to do. Believe it. Believe that that's what the issue is. If somebody is constantly talking about the fact that the country needs to look at where they are going in terms of debt, and that's what they're really concerned about, you might want to believe that that's actually an issue. And put in leaders who are going to actually make sure that these things come to a head. The sideshows have been going on for decades. For decades. And it's about time that Kenyans looked at the main attraction and focused on that. And for me, the main attraction is moving this country forward in terms of delivering on good leadership and delivering on the right development. It is important. You can't be in a stagnant position for so long. You're not moving forward. You're not moving back. You're just oscillating in one area. It is not going to help. It's not helping anybody.
You see, if the politicians do not see benefit to them in what we're saying, there will always be a bulwark. There will always be a hindrance to it.
I think another problem is that politicians actually don't see the benefit in actually making life truly better for people. It would actually be better for you.
Theoretically, they may even understand it, but I think they are overwhelmed with this greed and the need.
They're consumed.
Yes, to live opulently. There's this need to be part of the conspicuous consumption crowd. It's a drive. It's a push.
The folks who got it right are not. They're not mad, right? If you want to look at the socialist,
they went through what we're going through right now.
If you want to look at some of the socialist nations in this world and look at those who have, put their entire ethos or everything on that we all share. And if you want to go to the Scandinavian countries, we told the other day about Norway and how the sovereign fund, we talked about the sovereign fund and where it's about 4 billion. That has increased between 2019 and 2020. That they've perfected the art so well of making sure that everybody is able to benefit at the same time. That's what inclusivity actually means.
You know,
that's what it really means. It's not this business of saying...
It's not who.
It's not who. It's this business of making sure that there is equity, there is equality, and there is inclusivity.
You know, you pointed this out
board.
with reference to the late Gaddafi. He understood it very well.
Very well.
The Western world may have disliked him as the person who incubated terrorism, but his people, my goodness, that man, that oil money that he got, he did wonderful things for his people.
He used it for his people first.
Yes.
The people first. So when you want to talk about, that's what I'm saying. It would be good for us to understand. If you understand, I long for the day when leaders would understand that it actually is of immense benefit to you that you develop your people, that you develop the country.
And I'm saying they do
Immense.
understand, but they also understand that they need to amass an insane amount of money.
Why must those two be mutually exclusive?
You see,
why can't they do both at the same time?
Actually, Eric,
let's reward you by funding your lifestyle.
Not even that. What Ndu is saying is what will give them what they want. If, very simply, you have a vibrant and wealthy economy, my friend,
get better.
What stops you from actually getting to where you wanted to go easily without
Nothing
looking?
Stops you.
Yes,
it's gotten so bad until the point that Kenyans are even telling the leaders, "It's okay, just steal a little. You don't have to take everything. Just take a little bit, and then do the and then do the job." Can you imagine? You get to the point where people are saying, "Okay, you must be rich. Okay, just steal a little bit. We've understood. Just steal a little bit, right? And then spread the rest amongst the rest of us. Come on."
In fact, Ndu, you've hit it straight on the head, because the argument seems to be, why are they taking everything?
Yeah.
Leave some for us.
Yes, for heaven's sake.
Can you imagine? Leave some for us, for whom you're supposed to be working in the first place.
Don't eat the plant plus the seed. Just take the leaves, man.
No, these ones even eat the soil.
They take everything. The conversations that were happening at Bomas yesterday, if you just sat back and you listened to all the leaders, leader after leader, and what they said when they stood up, take this conversation and put it in any month of the year or any year of this decade, they'll say the same thing. When they come together, they'll say, this is the best moment for this country. They said this in 2010. They said this during the launch of the BBI report earlier.
10 months ago.
They said this. They will say this every time. When they were speaking at, national prayer conference meeting, whenever they come together, this is the same thing that they will always speak. So at what point are we going to get to a point where they actually speak the reality as opposed to just using the words that they keep using all the time? At what point shall they tell us, this is what we are going to do, this is what we've done, this is where we've failed, this is what we are going to do to rectify that?
Has the disconnect not always been, because the things which are said, the reason why they appeal to people, there are things that people envision as things that could actually get done.
Yep.
It's not that they're impossible. The disconnect is always when the speeches stop and the implementation is supposed to begin.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, a little bit is done.
When the lights go off and you actually have to do the work,
then we have
total disconnect.
We have a bit of a problem there, and that's why I brought in the civil servants into this game, because they play a very, very huge role in this disconnect that we're talking about. The politicians don't implement unless you're talking about the CDF and the monies that are given specifically. It is the civil servant whose job it is to implement these things. So they are very much part and parcel of this problem that we have. And the civil servant is actually us, because some of us work for the government. Some of us work for parastatals, which is the government. Now, if the leadership doesn't understand that the change has to come from them and it must be real, they really don't want to speak when the change now comes from them.
Time for us to take another break at 24 minutes after 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM, on KTN Home, online, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter, Spice FM TV, and Spice FM.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
This week in your Nairobian newspaper, we give you stories of Nairobi sexcapades from romps in millionaire dens to rods in footbridges over busy roads. Matatu gang going for your money and not just the fare. Mira or Mogoka, who is the fairest of them all? To shave or not to shave? That is the question. Also, find out why security guards are beefing with politicians for calling them watchmen. For these and many more stories, grab a copy of your favorite newspaper, The Nairobian, to make your week an interesting one. The Nairobian. We know where you live.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
All right, looking into Nairobi, it's mostly cloudy at 17, highs of 23 today. Chance of rains later on, cloudy conditions in Nyeri, and also looking at a wet afternoon, highs of 21. And in Nakuru, the highs will be 21, mostly cloudy at the moment at 17. Looks like rain in Eldoret later, with highs of 21 and lows of 13. Kisumu is cloudy at 21, highs of 26, it will be a wet afternoon. Looks like rain in the forecast for Kakamega as well, 23, the high and lows of 16. Into the coast, 27 degrees, highs of 29, coming down then to lows of 25. Malindi, mostly cloudy at 27, highs of 29. Outside of Kenya into Kampala, it's cloudy at 19, highs of 23, with thunderstorms expected later. Looks like rain also in Dar es Salaam, high of 29 today. It's raining in Johannesburg at 16 degrees, 27 with cloudy conditions later. And for now, partly cloudy in Lagos at 31. That'll be the high.
Spice FM. Nyeri. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice
Okay,
FM.
yeah, so it's still looking crazy on Mombasa Road this morning, all the way to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. That's what we're looking at. It's bumper to bumper, all the way through, guys. And so it looks like it definitely is going to carry on through most parts of the morning today. So if you're in or outbound, that's what we'll see. And also on Thika Road, coming in. I'm tired on your behalf. At the Pangani underpass, it's quite busy. Kiambu Road also is a mess. Then trying to join at Muthaiga Corner. It's bumper to bumper all the way from Roasters coming down through to Pangani. It looks like a crazy one today. I don't know what to say except for this one. We're going to have to sit through with a huge dollop of patience. Okay? Other parts, though, it's not looking too bad. Coming off Ngong Road and Langata Road and then joining with the roundabout at Nyayo Stadium, it shouldn't be too bad. Spice FM KE. That's how you can get us on Twitter. Text us on 40127.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, so that is what was happening at the Bomas of Kenya yesterday. So there was the issue of the jab between the president and his deputy. Was the deputy president basically saying that this conversation that I am raising on the wheelbarrow, because they have taken a number of jabs, and he kept saying the ODM leader made reference to something, and he talked about, the proletariat not being led by the bourgeoisie, and I hope you are not referring to me, and then saying the former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka made some reference, I hope you are not referring to me, and he came ahead again to talk about the wheelbarrow. And then the president stands up and says, you know what, it's a race. And we have a relay. And this is what is happening in the relay. And this is what is happening to my deputy. And listen just to what he said.
Hii ni ile ya kuhandover, unajua? Si ndio? Inaitwa relay. Unakimbia ule mwingine anakugojea pale, anatakikana kukugojea ndio ashike aendelee, si ndio?
Honestly, this was the funniest bit of yesterday's event.
It's hilarious.
It was the funniest. And there's something that I just picked out of that. Maybe it was intentional, maybe it was purely accidental. But the president's off-the-cuff remarks, he chose not to read any speech. His off-the-cuff remarks and his body language and the way he was speaking managed to bring down the tension in that hall significantly. Just before he stood to speak, there was palpable tension because of the deputy president and what the deputy president was saying, and then the crowd started jeering him. And then the president just came and, made all that up here, come on. It's neither here nor there. In fact, you saw the kind of handshake that they had with the deputy, the kind of bromance that they displayed even as they were exiting, with the president tapping the deputy at the back, with the deputy even coming to speak to the president. It tells a whole different story. And you wonder, okay, so wait. These two gentlemen.
Is there really animosity?
Even the president, the way he was saying, look, so we are in a race, right? I am the one who now has the baton and I am running. And your partner is supposed to be waiting for you at the end of the line so that you can hand over the baton. They take over and continue. Now, this guy here, he decided to turn back, and it's like he's coming for the baton before I finish the race. And they just make light of it. But there's something that they said. That all was saying openly for the first time. The president said, my deputy is not running the same race as I am running. He's running in a different direction. My deputy is not waiting for the baton. My deputy has decided he wants to start 2022 before 2022.
Which was the thing, right?
Well, you see...
There are those that have said, at what point has the president ever said that? He said it yesterday.
You see, then there's the question of interpretation. And the issue of political convenience and conveniences come in. Now that we have an election round the corner, the president has decided to take a different perspective on this matter. Because what is certain, and this is my perspective, we don't have a deputy, we don't have an assistant president. We have a deputy president. And the presidency is the president and the deputy. So you are not going to separate the two when it comes to the things we're talking about. That whole list that a fellow journalist listed the other day, that whole list that other people keep bringing up, they are tied to the hips, joined at the hips when it comes to these issues. And no one can take a bigger or a more significant blame than the other. They were in this together as a presidency. But the fortunes of politics being what they are, and if we see things that are being presented to us as differences, don't take it at face value.
No.
Don't.
Even if it's something that's spun over time.
Don't.
In the twinkling of an eye, as it were, in less than a minute, all of what you had based an argument on for the last 10 months
don't
was not the case. On this side, it would be that, hold on, the argument was that I had been left out, right? I had been left out and things were moving on without me. And so I decided to form my own path. In 2 minutes, you're told that actually you were aware of what was going on. If you chose to step back, that's something totally different. So can you imagine how many people formed an allegiance based on that perception. And then it could turn out that it actually wasn't true.
See, what I like about our political allegiances, they're very clear. Is there's some perceived benefit. And the benefit isn't something, it's not a pie in the sky benefit. It has a monetary value, and it even has a timeline. And there's the understanding that it'll come your way. Why? Because we've seen examples of it.
Yeah.
People who have certain political leanings have benefited. So that's the example that seems to drive people towards supporting. And in the same way, should they believe that there'll be better benefits elsewhere, it'll be a complete about turn.
You know, think about the people who had started jeering the deputy president yesterday. Others even standing up and shouting him down and saying, come on, we want the president, we want the president, we want the president. And then the president stands up and says, thank you very much for the birthday wishes. They sing happy birthday for him, and he's like, thank you very much. Next thing, I'm sure for some people in that hall, they were expecting then the president to go ahead and start talking about this BBI, how much this BBI means for the country, and how detractors should not be detracting us, and how those that are saying that it has provided no solution, they had the opportunity to present their views, and they did not, or he didn't. Here comes to say, in fact, I want to thank even my deputy. He was aware of this handshake.
Animosity.
We want to thank him because even through this journey, but it's only that now he's decided to start running this other way, and they laugh, they shake hands. You guys who could almost have fought if there were Ruto people in that hall, because we can clearly assume that there were very few people who were Ruto people in that hall. If there were Ruto people in that hall and that thing had gone on a bit longer, fists would have flown.
But he was able to put a
and
pin
there
in
they
it.
are. The people themselves are shaking hands.
Put a pin in it, diffuse that situation.
That is something
nicely.
you must always look at. Every time you hear utterances from politicians, no matter how strong they are, pause for a while and just think of a time, not in the distant past, when you've seen these apparently antagonistic people, and look at, as you say, their body language. That's what you need to look at. These people are not as adversarial as they appear to be.
No, they're not.
They never really are, because they have the same interests.
And they understand their interests.
And more importantly, none of them wants to see Kenya go into problems, because they're heavily vested in this country.
Yep. They understand their interests, and they understand exactly what they get out of it.
Yes, they do.
They also understand very well who they use as pawns in the game. They clearly understand. Wakini watu wako jana wamenitukana bwana. Unabado. You will see. And then they are sitting here, they're laughing. You as the people are the ones who are hitting each other back and forth.
Do you remember in 2002, one of the things that I remember of interest was when the former Prime Minister was actually addressing the then to be former president, now the late President Moi, said, please, this period that we're going into, we understand you want to leave. Just leave. Don't get involved, because things are going to get very thick here. What we're going into now, my friend, now that's an honest speech.
Just keep off.
We understand our politics. And we know that when one of the things, remember, even in the last election, when there was this debate that we were supposed to have, and the former Prime Minister said, look, there are things we say as politicians, all right? The president knows very well I'm not a madman, and he keeps referring to me as a madman. He knows very well I'm not a madman. He knows. But there are things we say, and it's in a political realm, and it's in a political context, and we understand it to be so.
The problem, though, is that even if they don't recognize it, that they understand that everybody else who's they believe that everybody else who's in the audience also understands that they're only speaking politically. But unfortunately, that's not the case. People take it seriously. People don't just take it at face value.
They take it to heart.
They take it to heart and believe that, hold on, these two fellows are fighting. There actually is a problem here, and we're going to choose sides. Now, it's dangerous territory to walk on at some point, because if you yourselves who are in the ring understand that, okay, we're just taking a few friendly jabs at each other, it's nothing life-threatening. Guess what? The people who are cheering you on have taken it totally differently. Now, the diffusion of this bomb essentially yesterday, what do you think it did in the minds of people who had taken sides and so vehemently stuck to a position? whereby they thought, no, there's a rift. And in fact, things are terrible.
Actually,
he took a pin and he put it in that balloon yesterday.
Even they don't think there's a rift. Remember, there are people whose value is determined by how they demonstrate their allegiance. There are those whose capacity allows them to demonstrate it by throwing things. There are those whose capacity allows them to demonstrate it by saying things. All right? There are those who you may not hear, but there are things they do. Now, the people who come to our attention usually are the ones who are loud and the ones who have affinity to throwing things.
Saying some crazy things.
Usually stones. And then words. Okay? It's all to show just how much they support this particular leader. So don't even be fooled by them as well. It's making sure that they have demonstrated, and it has been seen as a demonstration, and no one is in doubt as to what their position is. Now, what will be interesting to observe is that position can change. It can change. And the same vigor will now be applied in the opposite direction. Yes. Now, that's why I was saying that don't underestimate the capacity of the Mwananchi to understand and to play that game. That is the way they play their game at that level. The same game of ensuring that they entice you to involve yourself in politics by telling you that the people have decided. And they, the people.
You're our people.
And that's why they've come to see you. They will even tell you they have no wish to receive money because that's what you think. They have just decided that it's important for them to tell you. Some will even tell you, if you want to stand, don't come back home. Because you're letting us down. Because if you don't stand and if we don't vote for you, our problems will not be solved, which means they know there are problems. Now you make the mistake of falling into that lovely trap and presenting them yourself as the people's choice and see what sort of choice
find
you
yourself.
So it's a con game. And you're the mark.
And you're the mark. Any political aspirant is a mark. And the voting populace set you up. That's what. It's not that they are innocent in this. They are not. They are willing participants in this whole thing that we're discussing here. What you are right about is they sell themselves short. But they are participants. What do you say? How do you get to a point where you have individuals whose line of business is crowds for hire, some goons for hire? How do you get to that point? They've understood the lay of the land. You need a crowd. Okay, so you even have details. Okay, so do you want them to sing a song? All right. What do you want them to chant?
What do you want them to wear?
Or who do you want them to boo? And clockwork. That's politics.
That's what will happen.
That's politics, and that's our politics.
It's 18 minutes to 9 o'clock. We want to change the conversation now.
This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your day. Spice up your
in
life.
The country, COVID-19 has come, and COVID-19 affected livelihoods. But even before that, we have very many people in this country who are entrepreneurial. They think business. They think, what kind of opportunity can I have? That's why words like a side hustle and phrases such as those ones have place and space in this society. It's because people are always thinking, what else can I do to earn a living, to make an extra coin? People start their businesses. People start businesses as what they call a side hustle, and for them, it is a retirement plan. For others, it is, this is what I want to do to get out of formal employment, to get into my own business, and to employ others and to grow. This happens all the time. Come COVID-19, and very many businesses were ordered shut. Very many other businesses now had to emerge out of this, and we saw a lot of value from that.
Sure. Unfortunately, this is what happened. And many businesses were shut. People lost their jobs. But then out of that birthed another landscape of individuals who started businesses from where they were, the comfort of the space that they then had to be within. Started these businesses, and they've seen that it's actually something that is viable and something that they can go through in the future. So even if they do get a job in the future, or even if they find that they will continue in their previous employment, that these businesses actually make sense for them to continue. And the entrepreneurship that they then got into can continue. However, what we see is that in order for the lifeline of a business to go through, is that there's certain things that you need. In order to have this happen, you need visibility, you need awareness, you need people to see you, you need them to understand what it is that you do, what it is that you offer, and how those services can come to them. And some of those skills, unfortunately, are not taught when you're on the fly, when you're on the go, when you just started a business. You didn't have the time to learn it. Thankfully, there is a way.
Yep. So the ways in which people you go online and you want to run your business online, but then you just don't know, okay, so how do people know about my business that's online? That's number one. The second thing is, how do I connect to those people? What are the best tools to use online to connect to those people? Let's bring in an expert from Google, and this is Rosemary Momanyi. Rosemary is an expert with Google. She understands how Google platform works, and there's this particular platform called Google Grow 2.0. And we will talk about that now for a couple of days. Rosemary, good morning.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
Let's start from the basics, Rosemary. So somebody has started a business. We were told people then go online and they start searching for something. How do people discover you online?
Great. Very good question. So step one is you have to have an online presence. As an SME, it's so important to remember that you have to be found by your customers. So step one is we're offering SMEs a tool called Google My Business. So for example, if you're a plumber and you wanted to be found by people looking for your services, if you all have phones, can you just spend 1 second, just go and type in plumber near me on your phone or whatever device you have close to you. And then what comes up are business profiles. So plumbers who currently have a business profile will show up first and be found by their customers.
Okay. So I've done plumber near me and I see a number of plumbers.
Great. So the top one, what does it say?
I've got, so it brings me a map of where I am, and then it shows me among the ones that I'm seeing is Allied Plumbers Limited, there's Orchid Plumbing Company, and Frami Plumbers.
Exactly. So let's just pick Orchid Plumbing.
Orchid Plumbing Company. I click on it, then it opens up the website. Oh, no, it opens up a new page.
Yeah, so that's a business profile for Orchid Plumbing. You'll see the number of reviews that it has.
Yep.
You'll see their location. They're somewhere in Ring Road, Parkland, if I remember correctly. I Googled them the other day. That's how I know these guys.
Okay.
And then you'll see a phone number, how you can reach them.
Yes.
You'll see their opening hours.
Yep.
And at the top right, you'll see website. And then directions. And then appointments, and then calls. So if they have a physical presence, like in this case they do, and you click on website, you'll go to their physical website where it is. If you click on directions, it'll take you to their physical presence on Ring Road, Parkland.
Yep.
And then if you clicked on call, you can call them directly and get to either make an appointment with them, have them come and visit with you, or ask for a quote or some support from them. So it's a really powerful tool to help any SME right now create an online presence and be found. And what's important is this profile is free. There is no cost, absolutely no cost for this. But most SMEs don't know that it's available to them, and there's no cost. Now, if I'm an SME and I don't have a website, I'm able to create a one-page website, again, through this business profile, and have me put even more options available, whether it's photos or additional info about my product on that one pager. So those are the two free products available right now to any SME that doesn't cost them anything to get on those products.
Right. So what does everybody have to do to get on this? And can anybody look? I lost my job and I started an Apple delivery business. Okay. So I got a windfall of where I can get apples cheap and I can deliver them. And I want people to know about me. Where do I start?
Yes. Great. So there's two options on how you can start. Number one is you can type in google.africa118.co.ke, and then you'll go to a page to leave information where we can be able to either call you or you can call us. So you reach our partner, they're called Africa 118. They'll be able to take your information and then create for you your page. And you can then put your pictures of your apples that you're now selling, how you can be reached. If you have a physical presence, you can list it there on Google Maps and then be found by people looking for you. Option number two is to go to our Grow 2.0 website, and that's grow So it's google.grow /intl/SSA, and you come to our hub, and you select on the various options that include get tools and services, get customers, click on get customers, and you'll see the link to be able to get a business profile developed for yourself and follow the steps to create one.
Or if I just search Google Grow,
So google.grow.
If I just went and typed that on the search bar, google.grow, I'll see a result, because I think the / story is long for someone who's just listening on radio. So the easier one is just go search for google.grow, and then it brings the result of among the results on the search page would be the one for Google 2.0 Grow, right? It'll show me grow.google, and then I click on that, and then I can follow the instructions, right?
Correct.
Now, Rosemary, let's just talk about the statistics as we get to start this conversation, and we're going to be having these conversations for a couple of days to get everybody to understand then how can we take advantage of this, how can I get my business to grow, how can I be seen. Let's talk about the category that you chose to use as an example this morning. This is plumber near me. How many people search for the plumber near me search keywords in Kenya, or just plumber in Kenya? How many search for these services?
So we see many of those that come up. I don't have the exact number right now, but it's in the thousands that happen in a day. And then the interesting thing is those people who are actually found are those who have a business profile and who can be found online. So our goal is to try and create as many SMEs as possible to know that these tools are available to them, and it's the best place for them to be found by customers who are looking for them.
A question that might pop up, Rosemary, is that, if you talk about thousands of people looking for that, then in terms of options, what fear is there in terms of competition? Or does it not matter? So long as you have a profile, somebody's at least seeing you. So I may say, okay, if I create a profile, I'm just adding to the other numbers that would be there. What does it give, in terms of competition, and in terms of seeing one differently from another?
Right. So to go back to your query, plumber near me, the results were ranked, right? And if you see the ranking, those who have more reviews tend to show up on the higher list than those who don't have any reviews at all. So it's very important that if you want to be seen and to be found, to get more people to give you reviews, then you can show up on the results, because there are people can vote and say, yes, this plumber is good, I use them, and they're 5 stars. Or this one is really not so good, I don't recommend them, maybe only 1 star or no stars at all. To encourage SMEs, when they do have this product, to encourage more of their customers to review them, that will help them then show up higher on the results.
So we're seeing, for example, by using the word near me, then Google is able to tell where you are and bring you the results based on the location of your nearest plumber. Because, for example, in the case of our search, I noticed that because of wherever you are, the nearest plumber for you is on Ring Road, Parklands.
Exactly.
The nearest one to us, because we are on Mombasa Road at the Standard Group Center, is somebody who is on Mombasa Road, and then somebody else who's in South Sea.
Correct.
So how then is Google able to tell, A, where I am, and 2, where this plumber is?
Exactly. So the good thing about this tool is it helps SMEs show up on both Google Search and Google Maps. So they have a physical presence. They will also show up on Google Maps, which will point exactly where they are. So it looked at where you are currently based on Mombasa Road and showed you plumbers who are close to you based on where you are versus where they are because of the Google Maps interface. That way, we're able to help you pick one that is closest to you because of the Google Maps interface.
All right. So, Rosemary, we'll be having conversations with you on a daily basis, if you don't mind us just budging into your breakfast on a daily basis.
My pleasure.
And then we have this conversation with you, because what we'd like to do is to understand exactly how this search engine works, how then I can get my business online and get my business then to understand, to take advantage of this search engine. And then also how I can make sure that everybody sees me, everybody who should see me sees me. And if I have negative reviews, what to do about those? If I have got positive reviews, what to do about those? How do I link my business to the Google map so that then I can have that nice little lovely dot on a map that shows This is Eric's Plumbing, and it's on this particular area.
Okay.
How to do all that. We'll be doing that in coming days. Thank you very much for joining us today, Rosemary.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Rosemary.
Have a good day.
Asante sana. Time for us also to say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home. We've been with us since 7 o'clock. It's now coming to 5 minutes to 9. Join us again tomorrow on KTN Home. It will be from 7 again to 9. This conversation, however, takes place every morning on Spice FM KE, and this Spice FM is 94.4 in Nairobi. It's on in Mombasa 87.9, 102.4.5 rather in Kisumu. We've been having a problem with Nakuru, but it's now back up online. 96.0 frequency is back up on air. 96.7 in Eldoret, Nyeri 90.9, and Malindi is 97.7. See you again tomorrow, KTN Home on Spice FM. The conversation continues.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
All right. So, conversations we've had this morning. Very many comments also coming in on our social media handles. You know, all of them, and we call them our Twitter little birds. Unless you choose to ignore the reality and live out of the factual, Kenyans are known to be overtly tribal. It is manifested in almost all our day-to-day habits. Politicians only capitalize on what is already in existence. This is what the Invincible says. Stephen says, Kenyans are tribal to the core. A politician's work is to use that to his or her advantage to gain power. Just like preachers, they exploit people's inherent need for richness. And will say and sell anything that offers that hope, if it's possible. However, Kenyan Lugari boy says, we are not tribal, but politicians make us think that we are. They need to change how they address us, because that's how easily we end picking up the wrong politicians. Ogaya Bernard says, when is the next Nilotic migration? Wow. I want to leave Kenya. I can't stay here. This thing called tribe will destroy this country.
And yet, this competition, because it is competition, in many ways is responsible for what Kenya actually is. Someone does something and you feel, wait, if so-and-so can do it, so can I. You only need to look at businesses around you and how it is business opportunities and business prowess has actually escalated in this country. It's competition. And this is one of the benefits that I can speak of regarding the county. The county systems have brought businesses to the fore, business that ordinarily would never even have existed. People who are perhaps just content to do something small have been able to expand their capacity. Despite all the wrongs that we see, despite all the problems that we see, there are certain positive things that have happened. But the one thing that I like about devolution, it has brought us to question things that ordinarily we would never question. And it also brought us to understand that you can't continue hoping that you'll make progress by looking for someone to blame. Because right now, when you have money, as I said, in your county, it is yours, it is in your backyard, man, you can question it. You don't have to come to Nairobi to question it.
No. From
Kill
where
that
you
kid
are.
too.
Everything is right there.
Yep.
Yes.
Right at your doorstep, right where you are. And looking then at what the politicians say and how the information is then again framed. There's a comment here by Abu Jamal Dennis, which is also worth mention. And he says, Musalia Mudavadi raised real issues at Bomas. He stated what he feels is right and what he feels is wrong. The congregants applauded by clapping. Enter William Ruto. Repeated the former's point, didn't point out anything positive, and the media listed him as a show taker.
He does have a valid point, doesn't he?
He does.
He does have a valid point.
He does.
He does have a valid point, because if you're talking about someone who pointed out issues, someone who stood out just for the content of what he was saying with regards to the BBI, because it was a BBI launch, it was Mudavadi.
And it was point by point.
It was Mudavadi.
With this, we think. With this, we think.
Yes.
However, the Deputy President also did the same. With this, I'm questioning. With this, I'm questioning. But because it was the Deputy President, because of the kind of reaction that he was getting, then that becomes the news. And Musalia is reduced into just a quote somewhere at the top of a newspaper page or somewhere in the middle.
So you're saying that the jeering is what actually got him to be the news?
the reaction and all.
So our news is the drama.
Is that what Kenyans want to consume?
Is that what the media wants to present? And what is
not
consumable?
just the media. Those clips are available. They are being live streamed by all media houses. Look at what Kenyans shared on social media. How many shared Musalia's clips? How many shared? Look.
You see, I'm not focused on social media. I'm focused on what was printed on mainstream media. That's what I'm talking about. Because we contribute to that conversation as well. And that seems to be the tack that we decided to take.
Let's go to the top of the hour and look at topic and have another conversation. Good morning from
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, guys, looking any better? There's a challenge on Langata Kibera en route to Ngong Road this morning. The road is not very good at that point. We know that it's still being worked on, but there's some traffic there, and so that's bumper to bumper as you then join Ngong Road. It's going to be an issue in and outbound on Mombasa Road today for some time. It's going to take a while to get out of this one. It's moving a lot better than it was about an hour or a half ago, but we still have traffic issues there, as we do on Thika Road, coming off of Kiambu Road and joining with the major highway. The service lanes actually are moving a little bit faster as you then get towards Pangani. So we're still seeing problems here. Langata Road, just a little bit here and there, but it's okay. Uhuru Highway, then all the way from the Nairobi Stadium roundabout through to Westlands. Getting into the CBD might be a bit of a challenge, but you'll get there eventually, moving a lot faster than it was previously. Hopefully you'll get out of this without too much. We'll look at it about half an hour or so and see how that may have changed. Okay? Talk to us on Twitter, SpiceMKE, or text us 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room.
Good morning.
The only way to start your day.
To Spice FM. This is an every weekday morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Well, I think everyone in Kenya is tribal. That's what Godfrey Ogo says. It has gotten even into religious groupings. And Peter Ngoge says, why do we have tribal divisions during the elections? And other days, there is no divisive reason. The plant should be uprooted, and not with BBI, but with all Kenyans coming to one common goal of electing leaders who will unite during the hostile moments.
There, I have to agree.
You agree?
Yeah, I mean, on a day-to-day basis, we don't have a problem. But then suddenly when elections come around, there's a tribal issue.
You can even tell the month.
When there's a political issue, we become tribal.
Other than that, you don't have a problem. I mean,
actually, look
why
at
is it that we'd say, sorry, City?
No,
why
please,
is it
go
that
ahead.
we'd say that, look, President's backyard, the Kikuyu have moved to Rift Valley. Oh, the Kikuyu have now gone to Bondo. Why?
Well,
I mean, what
of what significance is
who
it?
Who is pushing that narrative? I mean, what is it made in reference to? It's made in reference to a political alliance, political issues and shifting.
And you can't shift unless there was a position that was presumed to exist in the first place.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
And also, it becomes something of wonder when something which was considered almost deemed unthinkable is actually happening. If it isn't a wonder, no one will discuss it, no one will even mention it.
It will not even arise.
No, it will not feature. It won't. But that it features, and it features that prominently, and it becomes an issue of discussion, serious discussion. It means that something which was considered the norm has stopped being the norm.
We get to that point anyway. When Ekuru Okot vied for elections in the last election, he got a number of votes. He's Turkana. How many of those votes that he got were Turkana? I'm sure you'll find many that were not Turkana.
You know,
it's not about a tribal leadership or tribal alliances. When George Nyanja became an MP for Limuru at one point, and Raila Odinga's political party, that time, the Tinga, what was it called? NDP.
Was it NDP?
NDP. Right.
Yes, it was NDP.
Yeah. And we had an MP from Central which had a presidential candidate. They vote for this, they vote for this, they look at, and how many people were elected, and the SDP's ticket, the one that had Charity Ngilu as a presidential candidate, in the same Central Kenya. How many times did Paul Moita get elected on a political party ticket that is not one of those dominant ones? When this issue of politics and tribes and saying suit and saying the people of this region belong to this political grouping of this political party, lies. Anyway, CT, as we begin the hour, remind us today's proverb.
Yes, indeed. A fool has to say something. A wise person has something to say.
A fool has to say something. A wise person has something to say. All right. Something sad happened in Tononoka High School. And they're mourning the death of their head teacher.
It did happen. And we're looking at very many things as a result of that. If we just want to look at that story, the principal of Tononoka Secondary School in Mombasa, where 11 teachers tested positive for COVID-19, died. The County Education Chief Officer, John Musuve, said that Mohammed Hamis died at the Mombasa hospital, where he was receiving treatment in the intensive care unit. Musuve, however, did not confirm whether Mr. Hamis was one of the 11 teachers at the school who had tested positive for the coronavirus. Yes, I can confirm that Hamis has died. I cannot tell you whether he was one of the 11 teachers, one of the teachers infected with the virus. Reports from the hospital indicate that Hamis was taken to the ICU after he developed breathing complications soon after admission on the 15th of October. Last week, Mombasa County Commissioner Gilbert Kitio said 11 teachers from Tononoka and 4 from Star of the Sea Girls High School had tested positive for COVID-19. The 2 schools located within the Mombasa Central Business District were closed for 2 weeks after the incident. And now we're looking at unconfirmed reports that said a teacher at a 3rd school in Mombasa had been taken ill with COVID-19 related symptoms and was currently at the ICU at the Coast Provincial General Hospital. Okay, so what are we looking at here? We're looking at more cases of COVID-19 being reported in schools, about going to the 3rd week now after schools opened on the 12th of October. And this is not the only area we've seen. The coast, we've seen this, and we've seen some cases now coming out of our friend's school, Kamusinga. We've seen a teacher in Kiambu County having also died from COVID-19 related issues. We are seeing more and more of these. The same Tononoka Secondary School and Star of the Sea in Mombasa have said that they're now testing students to see what the issue may be. We heard about other schools here in Nairobi whose teachers had tested positive for COVID. Across the country, however you choose to look at it, with the rising cases of infections, you will have schools affected by this. We've seen that as of yesterday, the CS Ministry of Education stated very clearly that for now, the opening of schools for other students apart from the candidates who had been asked to come back would be shelved in the meantime, in light of the rising infections. And I think that's a good example of how information or data can be used to fuel decisions. In relation to COVID-19 and what we are seeing now, in what many are calling the first wave, in what many are calling the continuation of the second wave rather, and what many are calling the continuation of the first wave, I think it is vital that information be used to fuel decisions. Those who may have taken a back seat, even from the Ministry of Health, and said, okay, we're going to share this information, but we're not going to be definite or come out guns blazing in terms of what people must do, need to give out this information. And those who are recipients of the information need to use it. Unfortunately, right now, what we are doing by not being clear, especially when it comes to schools, we're playing Russian roulette. But in this case, there's not only just one bullet in the chamber. The entire chamber is full. The whole chamber is full. So if you click it, it's going to shoot and somebody is going to get hit. That's what we're doing with this COVID-19 now. opening of schools, if you ask me, at the time when they opened was a mistake because it was not fueled by adequate information as to what was going to happen. It was clear in the minds of people in terms of perceptions that, you know what, we may be teetering on the dangerous here when we're opening schools and we don't actually know what is the case. Because we were not testing, it was impossible to know what the real situation on the ground was. Schools opened, and this is what we see. Many call it coincidence. I don't believe that there was a coincidence. I think we're dealing with the reality on the ground. We know for a fact that more cases are going to pop up in the coming weeks. Now is the time to close schools. Now is the time to say this is a reality that we are dealing with. Yes, no more students will go to school as was planned for them to go back on the 26th of October, which was yesterday. But even those who are in school now are at risk in a way that they would not have been when they were at home. And I am saying with the information that is there, with the information that is not even being made to the general public, now is the time to make a move and say we are not going to continue to put especially children in harm's way when it comes to the possible infections of COVID. Data and information must be used to make decisions. It is about time. Do not make this mistake of keeping schools open when we are faced with the threat of infections, especially within schools. Now is the time to do it, and it must be done before we get right into the danger zones.
If we look at the way the government opened, or at least sets to opening the economy, and at the same time combine it with giving the examination classes an opportunity to go to school, the one thing that in my mind is clear is that they were informed. I don't think they were uninformed. It's a question of what information they used, because it isn't. We have a brain trust, and I don't believe. And this is a group of experts who actually know their work. They know what they're about. It isn't as though they gave one piece of advice. In such situations, they'll give scenarios. Look, this is what we expect to see. This is what is likely to happen, and so when you present that, then the decision is then made by the people who are charged with the duty of making those decisions to make a decision. And then there's the detail of the pressure from business people, pressure from school owners, pressure from parents. Now, if a decision has to be made with all these things, the decision that was made, in my opinion, about opening schools, I wouldn't say it wasn't thought out. I may argue it was ill-timed. But now with hindsight, we can be very clever. But at that time, our numbers, when this decision was being made, the report that we had was that our numbers were going down. And this is a pattern that has been followed throughout the world. Numbers go down, certain considerations that had been under lock and key are freed.
Numbers had gone down. However, the amount of testing that was being done at that time also would not have been adequate in terms of fueling that information. The amount of testing that is currently being done is significantly different from what was happening 2 weeks prior to October 12th. Significantly different. Now we are looking at not less than 5,000, 3,000, and going above in terms of the number of tests that are happening. On the day that 1,680 cases were found in the country, 1,068,
were reported.
1,068 cases reported in the country. That came from a sample size of 7,559. Right? Never have you seen a higher sample size in the country. So we're looking at also more people who are being tested, and that's how we see the higher numbers. Who's to say that even at that time, when this decision was being made, that people did not have COVID-19, but it was just not being reported? So how do you then make a decision whereby the very tools that you would use to find out that information were not being employed? Testing was not being done as rapidly as it's being done now. So how can you say that you made a good decision whereby you didn't apply all the equipment that was necessary to make it? The other countries in the rest of the world that were making this decision, what was happening? What have they been doing? They've been testing rapidly. We can fault the United States, for example, of saying, you know what, you guys are playing with this thing, but guess what? How do they know those high numbers that they have? 8 million cases, how do they know? They've done over 100 million tests around the country. They're testing. And they're using this, and that's how they're getting the information that they have. And that's all I'm saying. That you need to use the information that is readily available to you in order to then make the decision. If you choose to make a decision contrary to the information that you get, truly that one is up to you.
What is your feeling? Is your feeling that those at the Ministry of Health do not have access to adequate data, or that they have access to data that they're not using? What are you saying?
No, I think that the Ministry of Health have been churning out this information.
Based on data?
Based on the data that they have available. We heard from them. We heard from them that they wish they could do that. As much testing as they would like is not happening. CAS Mercy Mwangangi talked about this several times, and she said, we want to ramp up our testing. We want to have more as much as possible. We want to do as much as we can, but we just are not able at the moment because we don't have enough test kits.
Okay.
But we will try.
Okay. But with what they have, there's how they have then decided to deploy their testing, so that then they're able to still gather information that can show them a picture of what's happening in the country, right? And this I had assumed because we heard from one of the members of the Brain Trust, Professor, what's his name?
Omwanzala.
Professor Omwanzala had told us this. The Kenya Medical Association had even put forth a proposal to the Ministry of Health and said, guys, let's revise, let's use what we have, but let's make sure that what we have is being best used. So probably the people at the Ministry of Education, despite the limited capacity, they're still able to get a picture of what the country looks like in terms of the spread of this virus in the community, in terms of now even knowing the kind of seriousness that we have in the community. When the Director General of Health comes and says we are seeing an increase in the number of symptomatic people and a drop in the number of asymptomatic cases that are presenting with COVID-19, it's based on some data. And they're able to look at that and see this is a representative or representation of what is happening countrywide. So there are people who have information. I think we need to now be pointing our attention to those that are making the other decisions. Are they factoring this information, or are they factoring this information plus other information which we are not privy to? And what is this other information that they have?
No, but the decision making, you may have the information and you could also disregard that information completely.
Yep.
And make up a decision that is purely political.
A pressurized decision in this case, which unfortunately is what it looks like was pointed towards.
So when it comes to schools reopening, at that point, maybe, the numbers going down, infection rate dropping, blah, 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 blah. And you can see there was that. Even The Nation today has a very nice graphic that shows, the infographic shows the number of cases per week up to where we are at now, week 32. And it shows between weeks 19, 20, 21, we had a peak in the number of positive cases. And then we went all the way and dropped up to week 26, week 28, which had 876. And then we've started now rising again. So was this all the information that was considered? Was the information of there's likelihood of there being a second wave or another peak again appearing also factored in when we said reopen schools, when we said reopen the economy, when we said reopen everything?
No.
You don't think so?
I don't think it was taken into consideration because unfortunately what you have now is that you still have this holding on to that decision to open. Because if it was that we were told there might be a second wave, we would have said, okay, we can open, and if we see that there's a problem, then we will retract. But what do we have now? That the schools are going to remain open. Even with, it's according to the CS, it's even with the rising cases, those who've gone back to school are going to remain in school. Now, had it been fueled by that decision that it's possible a second wave would come about, then you would hear what they say in that we can make the decision to open, but if things get crazy, we can retract that decision. We see a total opposite now.
Can we take a break and take a look at the weather, and then we continue this conversation? We'd like you to join in this one, 0719 or 40127, our SMS number, Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The decisions combating COVID-19. Or are they just 18 minutes to 9? We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
It has been a tough year for your business, hasn't it? But you hung in there. You pressed on. You persevered. And now it's time to rise up. It's time to get ready, to get going, to get selling. And Google is here to help you rise up. Get free training and tools to help your businesses adapt and grow online. Visit g.co/Grow Africa to start now.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather.
Okay, so mostly cloudy in Nairobi at 18 now. Highs of 23 today and a chance of showers anytime now. It's mostly cloudy in Nyeri at 18, highs of 21 and lows of 15. And going west, it looks like it's going to be a rainy day, as is in Nakuru, 18 degrees, mostly cloudy at the moment. We'll see highs of 21 and lows of 14. Eldoret at 17 is mostly cloudy. We'll see highs of 21 and lows of 13. It's 23 and mostly cloudy in Kisumu. Highs of 26, lows of 19 with a chance of showers, as will be in Kakamega, where the highs will be 24 and lows of 16 today. It's mostly cloudy at 28 in Mombasa. The highs will be 29 and coming down to lows of 25. Mostly cloudy in Malindi at 27. There'll be some rain here later with highs of 29. Cloudy conditions in Kampala at 21. Highs of 23 with thunderstorms in the forecast. It's partly cloudy in Dar es Salaam at 27. Highs of 29 and lows of 24. And it's raining in Johannesburg. Light rain showers will continue throughout the day at 17 currently. Highs of 27 and lows of 26. In Lagos, it's 31 degrees and partly cloudy. That'll be the high for today. Let's look through into Beijing, where it's mostly sunny at 17. And the lows will be 4 as they go into the afternoon. 8 degrees and partly cloudy in London. 14 degrees the high with rains expected later. It's going to be a showery kind of afternoon in Paris. Highs of 13 and lows of 8. And we'll wrap things up in New York. It's a foggy morning at 15. The highs will be 16 and lows of 11.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94
appear to be having is a second wave of infections in the country. What we are seeing is hospitals getting more and more people seeking care in hospital. We're seeing the number of positive cases rising in the country, the positivity rate also rising. And also what we are seeing is students still going back to school. And this is what you have an issue, specific issue with today.
Generally, I mean, yes, I think that we're putting children in harm's way. I think we're putting, and not just children, but the people then who then will be associated with them in harm's way when this would happen.
Teachers,
support staff, parents, everyone.
And their siblings, if they have siblings.
Yeah, who are at home,
yes,
waiting for them to come back.
And also if they had playmates, the playmates that they had, again. You see, the experts say that there are certain things that one must consider before one reopens. Okay, first of all, number one is you need to actually confirm that the pandemic is actually easing off, that plateau is being reached. Confirm. Evidence-based data. Then secondly, they must also ensure that they actually have the capacity in place to deal with the situation as they have. Meaning, do you have the bed capacity? Do you have enough test kits? Are your health workers not just trained, but are they fully equipped? This must be in place. And should you need to test and quarantine? Because when you open up, you expect the numbers. You actually do expect the numbers to rise, by the way. But are you able to manage
and contain
the numbers? All right. And then there are other considerations that follow. Now, I mentioned those first two because in this country, if we were to ask those two questions, would we say that we have actually ensured that there was a plateau? Number one, have we in place ways of dealing with the rise in infection? Because when you open up the economy, the numbers were going to rise. This one is known. You don't open the economy and the numbers go down. It doesn't happen. Yes. So that's the question. Were we ready in that respect?
I mean, everybody said they were, but unfortunately we saw that it was not the case. And this is what I'm saying. If you can even infer or assume that you open up the economy and this is what is likely to happen, then that would have been the time to say, okay, let's wait and see what happens as the economy opens up. Do we then want to be very careful about making the decision to open up schools? right? You know that it will rise.
Yep.
You know that there will be added infections. Would that have been the time to open up schools? Again, the sector that closed down first before anything else, because the danger was very clear and evident that it is the 1% of the population that you have moving around en masse more than anything else. Students in schools across the country who were away from their normal habitude. You knew that they were the ones who could then spread this thing the most. So you shut them down first. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, when the economy is opening up, you realize and you are aware that there will be added infections. Why would you then bring in this most vulnerable percentage of the population into this situation that you know is going to have increased numbers of infections? Why would you do that?
But even
Why wouldn't you wait and see? That is what the wait and see should be. Wait and see for the next 14 days how things happen when you've opened up the economy completely. When you've opened up all the counties, wait and see what would happen. And then with that information, you might make the decision. All right, let's open schools or let's not. But it didn't happen.
Actually, that is now the third factor that must be considered. The sequential opening. You don't just open. You say, okay, we're opening up the economy. Let's do this and see how that works. Let's do this and see how that works. And then with consultation and with a watchful eye. And then fourth, and this one is important, there is the need to understand, because there are people who open up the economy before yours. How did that one go?
How did they do it?
How did they do it, and how did that one go? And then you must be ready to reimpose those restrictions should you see. Now, countries that seem to have put a check on COVID have done precisely this. And this is where the examples come from. They notice that things aren't going well. Man, they lock the country up completely as they see what next to do. Now, unfortunately, the reality is that locking up the country is coming with consequences.
It has serious consequences.
Yes.
When you raise that, and I agree with the point of the decision to reopen schools and the time that decision was made. However, when we talk about the sequential reopening, that's what we've had in this country. And I'll repeat that. We've had the president coming up to speak and says, all right, so what we are going to do is I want to move curfew from 7 to 9. And I also want to allow people to come into restaurants and do takeaway service and do plated service when you're seated down, but monitor the numbers. Let's increase the number of people who go to church from this point. We shall observe for the next 30 days. Then it says, next 30 days I shall advise again. Based on the advice and what we've seen from monitoring, we can ease it up again further. We did that.
Except for when it came to opening schools.
Up to a point where now it was open all those things and then open schools again.
Now, what you've just said would have been fantastic if the same thing was done with opening schools.
What do you mean?
Because
that's what was done with opening schools.
No.
Opening schools came after many other aspects of the economy
When
had been
he
reopened.
opened,
No, that's not what she's saying.
When they opened the economy the last time and said, okay, now bars and restaurants can open. What would have made sense when you're talking about that sequential opening was to say, all right, now that we have opened this up, let us see what is going to happen, even if you wanted to give it another 30 days, and let us see the infections that will take place. Why do you think he was categorical about what he said on that day? When he said that for now, this matter of opening schools, let us see how, and then we'll talk about the when. And then 3 days later, they open schools. Why? Why was there not that wait period? Why was there not that wait and see? You've opened up everything. Now there's movement, added movement, right? Again, throwing back this vulnerable population back into this mix. Why was there not that wait and see? Let's see how things will progress. Are we going to see a jump up, even if you had opened one class, even if it was just for
I would argue that there was a wait and see.
For 3 days? Sure.
No.
Okay.
No, not for 3 days. There's a wait and see. So you've opened up all these other aspects of the economy. You've opened up. The last thing that he opened is push the curfew from 9 to 11, open up the bars a bit longer, and open up restaurants a bit longer. All right? And then the next thing that you do, open just the candidate classes. It is sequential, not schools.
After you had seen.
But that's what we're saying.
But the candidate classes were not going back to school alone. There were other people who were involved in the process.
That is part of the reopening.
Which is what I'm saying. No.
In bits, listen to my argument. In bits, the bit is you open 4, 8, Form 4, only those and the teachers, let them go back to school as you observe. Partial reopening. You have opened up everything else for adults to do. Then also you have told teachers to stay in school 2 weeks prior. Then you have also now told the students, come back to school. as we observe. We are still in that phase of observing what is happening with this. Are they about 2.5 million people going back to school?
That's my problem.
That's it.
You're observing while this thing is actually taking place. That's my problem.
But
you
the
should
observation at all times is, well, this thing is taking place.
No.
Even when you're opening bars, when you're telling people to get out of Nairobi, it's while this thing is taking place.
We've just said, by virtue of the fact that you're opening up, expect infections to rise. We've said that, right? So you have another phased opening that took place. And then you observe as those things are happening. Again, putting this vulnerable population back, there would have been no problem even observing for 2 weeks, because this is the time that it took for you to see those infections rising again. There would have been no problem observing after that opening had taken place. Okay, are we seeing infections rising or dropping? All right, then let's introduce another element where we bring the candidates back.
Yep.
You could have done that.
Yep.
However, it didn't happen. And what do we see now?
What we are seeing now is the rise in cases.
And it's affecting schools.
What is the rise in cases in terms of the young population turning positive?
We don't know, because tests have started taking place as of last week.
So what
10
do you
days
know
ago.
about schools?
We're waiting for tests.
What do you know about schools so far?
We know that some teachers have tested positive, and we know that some
schools.
teachers have died.
And from what we were talking about here, teachers in the school from a certain part of a certain village. So not necessarily because of the school.
A teacher has died in Kiambu.
There are
a
adults
teacher has died in
somewhere.
Mombasa. And
the majority of people in hospital across the country are not teachers.
It doesn't matter. You don't know that. You don't know that tests have been done.
The majority of the people in hospital are not teachers. We know the people in hospital, they have not been said to be teachers.
That's not the point. You have schools where teachers have tested positive. That's what I'm saying. That's the point.
And you have communities
and
where
you have
people
a danger.
have tested positive.
Right. But now you are including students in the mix.
So you have tested positive.
The tests have been done. You're waiting for the results. That has been recorded over the last 3 days. Results are being waited for. Why take the tests if they don't think that there's any danger of infection for them? Tests have been taken. You're waiting for the results. You don't know. We don't know.
And that is part of it. That is how else would you know?
You put them into you wouldn't have to if you waited and saw that there's a danger that's lying here. And so let's not then put them in that danger if you had waited and seen the trends that this thing was taking. And then you make a decision based on that. That observance is what did not take place.
Actually, how would you ensure that the students were safe if you didn't let them go to school?
That's what I'm saying. It's dangerous, though. It's dangerous. You can't say that, okay, let's just
try
and throw them in.
It's dangerous for the economy. You see, the moment you open up the economy, unfortunately, there is no absolutely safe way of doing this thing. One has to be cautious, one has to be flexible in their thinking, one has to be flexible in their approach. That's actually just the reality. But that the government took the steps. Remember my position. It's not that they were not informed. Sometimes the government feels you need to take a bold step. Yes. And the argument is that they are gambling with the lives of the students. Let's say, for instance, they had waited 1 month. Okay, let's take your argument. And then we suddenly find, for instance, that like now, the numbers are going up. The numbers actually aren't going up. The way we've been testing, these results were always in the offing. It's just that at the time that they were being reported, had they been reported in a timely fashion, maybe the schools wouldn't have opened. Okay? But they opened. Now, whether again the flexibility comes in is, if it appears that the opening was a mistake, shut it down.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Again, that information that you're receiving that is clear for you, shut it down. But still, that's not happening. And that's what I'm saying. Okay, the information was late. The information was late, but now it is coming.
At what point do you want it to be shut down?
Why not now? Why not now?
Why now?
Why not now when you see that infections are rising? Why not now?
I've asked you this question and you have not answered. I've asked you, have we seen of the 2 million plus population of learners who have gone back to school, what is the infection rate among those ones?
We'll wait and see when the results come out.
So we don't have the information to make the shutting down now, right? Right now we don't know.
What are you seeing?
We are not seeing children in hospital. That's what I can tell you. We are not seeing children in hospital.
That doesn't mean they're not infected. We know for a fact that people can be sick and they don't have to be in hospital.
It is true, and that's why I mentioned that in opening up, the other thing that needs to be considered is the very thing you're saying, the ability and the capacity to be able to manage the infection. Now, I would, in tandem with what you're saying, focus on, are we ensuring, when we allowed children to go back to school, did we ensure that our health facilities were able to cope with an infection rate, which was going to happen? Or should it really go very high? Were they able to now? That question is not difficult to answer. The answer is no.
No, it's clear.
So, from that perspective, that alone, because if you're not prepared, then in that case, we are putting the children.
26 minutes to 10. Let's take a break, take a look at what's happening in the world, and then continue the conversation.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru.
Okay, looking a little bit better, but really not so much. Thika Road has been compared to hell this morning. We don't know exactly what happened this morning, but any way you want to look at it, all the way from Roasters through to Pangani, that's a long stretch, folks. The traffic has been bumper to bumper. It's not moving. And then add in the drama that comes from Kiambu Road. My goodness, it's not looking good this morning, guys. So Thika Road still giving you that terrible situation. It's going to need dollops of patience this morning. Mombasa Road also in and outbound, still giving a hard time to many folks, and it looks like Mombasa Road is going to be this way for some time because we have the construction that has taken center stage in certain parts now, right around Bellevue, and then again at Division 2000, right there, the road is now being turned into one lane. So that's where the traffic is coming from. You need to be patient in this one, one by one, I guess, is what gets us there. So today has been a crazy day for traffic. Pole sana, Spice FMKE through the day on Twitter. Text 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
It's 24
FM,
minutes to
Nairobi.
10 o'clock. Remember, our SMS number is 40127 and our phone line is 0719-012-600. Join this conversation. Nduoko is saying, look, you have the information, you can see the information that is there, you can see it either anecdotally or in fact just from the data that you've collected. It's time to reconsider that decision to reopen schools. Shut down the schools now.
Shut it down.
Shut down all the schools now. Do you agree with Ndu or do you not? 0719-012-600 or Spice FMKE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please post your comments. Shut down the schools now, yes or no? Let's go to the phone lines. Daniel in Kisumu, good morning.
Good morning, Eric Ndu and City Muga.
Good morning to you.
Yes, I'm so much delighted to see you talking about this thing in a strongest term.
Mm-hmm.
The COVID, based on the data. But let me do some correction there because, we are not on the second wave because the first wave was never, the curve was never flattened. Yeah. And this spike is real. What Kenyans don't understand is that the testing and data transmission previously marked with delays and inaccuracies. But we cannot conclude that there is inefficiency in terms of data transmission. Are you getting me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and the fact that the first wave didn't go away, the cases that we are seeing is that the incubation of the first phase wave of the asymptomatic cases that were previously the previous cases, they're just being resuscitated because of the weather. That is the weather. The cold weather is here with us again, and I think the school is the worst community when it comes to community transmission. And I think government should take the stringent measures and take drastic action to at least close schools again. Because this transmission, the way it's going, it's going. There is going to be the strongest surge ever.
So shut the schools now.
I think it's now. This is the right time to close the schools before this community transmission goes beyond the limit.
Okay.
Yeah. And in schools, the worst situation is that in schools, the way the teachers themselves don't have adequate information about COVID and the training on the COVID and the measures. And what is happening in school is that there's, in fact, in a public school just near me here, there is no social distancing. Even the teachers themselves, they don't guide the children on how they can control and on how they can appropriately check these measures. So it's this is the time for the government to at least close the schools.
Okay. Asante sana,
yeah.
Daniel.
Yeah, thank you.
What do you think? 0719-012-600, call in and let us know. Should schools be closed immediately because of the rising number of COVID-19 cases in the country? That's the conversation we're having. So just to look at this infographic that has been published by the Nation today, it just looks at the COVID-19 cases, weekly cases, and the number of deaths from week 1. We are now on the 32nd week since the first case was reported. If we look at the cases and how the graph presents itself, from week number 1, they start rising. When we get to week number, let's say week number 18, we had 2,698 cases. The following week, week number 19, 3,928. Week 20, 4,312. Week 21, 4,498. This is just showing a graph. They are peaking. And this is the highest we've had in 1 week. Week 21, 4,498. After that, they started dropping, 4,343. We came all the way down to week 23, 2,687. Then the lowest again we had in that period was coming to week 28, 876. So you can clearly see that there was, in that graph, in the number of, looking at the weeks, there's a time when we had very high number being reported in 1 week, 4,498 in week 21. And the lowest since then has been week number 28, 876. Now we are back again to the rise, where at week 32, we're at 4,069 cases. So that's where we were, that's where we are. It clearly shows that we had a peak, we came down, now we are going back up again in terms of the number of positive cases being reported out of a similar number of samples over the period. So there's a rise in cases. Stories are also indicating that people are now presenting themselves to hospital, more and more people. We've just read
in fact,
the story
very many more people. It's
very
not
many
just
more
more,
people.
Very many more.
Very many hospitals now talking about their isolation units almost getting to capacity. An isolation unit, a hospital that has about 100 and something beds of isolation, already more than 85 people admitted in isolation there. 1,000 and something people in hospital, 3,000 more people under home-based care. So there's a rise in the number of cases. There's a rise in the number of people seeking hospitalization. So then, is that enough information then to inform the government to review the measures that it had taken?
Sure, I mean, it's indicators. And anybody will tell you that even when you're trying to make that, they're indicators. There's some things that are not fixed in stone or hard facts on a tablet. However, they're indicators that you can then use. The same way that you can say there was this indicator that showed that the cases were lowering. However, it was not based on, there was at the same time, even when those indicators became present, there was the complaint that we were not able to use as much as we could in terms of tools in testing. So you can imagine now, if you were using or doing the testing at the capacity at which at least you're doing it now, it would have given you a totally different response, or it would have given you different indicators. So now you have that. It's not being hidden. It's out in the public view. Why would you continue holding fast to this decision, which it is clear could pose a risk? Nobody is saying that, okay, there are 1,000 children dead in a school and then that's why, therefore. But no, it's pointing to the danger. The light has been put on. Come on. Why are we now still waiting? Do we want to say sorry later? Do you want to say that was a terrible decision or that was a terrible situation? I wish we should have, or we could have, or we would have. Why get into that decision? Why get into that situation? I understand that many people say, oh, it's a candidate class. We have to do exams. But guess what? Wouldn't you rather that they did the exams when they're not compromised or when they're alive?
You know, the tiebreaker in this discussion would be if the government could afford to conduct antibody tests in all our schools. Literally.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you
would know for sure.
There'd be no doubt.
Mm.
You'd know exactly where you stand. But is that possible? Is the government actually capable? No. Let me ask the question again.
It's just
yeah.
Yeah.
Is the government capable?
No, they're capable. Are they willing?
Mm-hmm. Is the government willing to conduct antibody tests?
Yes,
in the
capable
schools?
there.
It's
a question of willingness.
Mm.
You see, the one thing that is certain about what we're saying is precisely what, in my opinion, should actually take place. Because the more we discuss this subject, the more people get informed about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The moment you have a pandemic, the truth of the matter is, until when you talk about evening the curve or flattening it, you're not saying it no longer exists. No. We're saying we've learned to live with it and it isn't fatal.
And contain it.
It's manageable.
It's manageable and it isn't causing undue harm. That's what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And unfortunately, as we may think so, but the opening of schools, unfortunately, helps us arrive at this particular decision. Because then you know. And where Eric was absolutely right is that it has been staggered. The discussion is probably what occupied our minds because we got the impression the ministry wanted to open up all schools to all students. We said, whoa, that doesn't sound right. But they themselves have said they've halted it. So it means that they are sensitive to what is actually happening.
Which is great. That's what I said that in the very beginning. I said, look, the announcement that came from the Ministry of Education yesterday that actually what we're going to do, we're not right now because of what we see, we are then not in a hurry to open schools for the remaining learners.
Mm-hmm.
Because of what you see, also, you should be able to take the decision to say, even for those ones that we have opened for, because of what we see, keep them out of harm's way and let them go.
What in particular are you saying is this great harm that we can see? Because even if the children stayed at home and played, you see, when you talk of infections, we shouldn't come from the point of view of assuming that when children went back to school, some of them are not infected.
No, I would say that some of them were infected, but what you do is that you increase the possibility or the probability of them infecting others because they're now all in the same place.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
that's what we have seen. We talked with Dr. Masika last time, and that's what he told. I mean, it was clear coming from a scientific and medical point of view that even if you have a child who is festering a cold at home, they're all right. But the minute you remove them from that environment, and they're controlled. They're controlled at home. Their parents are watching over them. They may play around in the compound, whatever. But they're coming back home. You take them out of that environment, you put them in school or in another environment where other children are. You then raise the probability of infection soaring. It's clear. It's not a romantic assertion. It's just fact.
Okay. There's this other bit which will be controversial, as I said. From what we have seen in COVID cases in the country and in other parts of the world, those that are being more affected by the COVID are the older people. Those that are, it's true, we've even had children less than 1 year old testing positive for COVID-19. Those that have been severely affected by COVID-19, those that have been hit hard by COVID-19 are the older people. Mm-hmm. Or even when they're younger people, it's people with other underlying conditions. Mm-hmm. So the younger population mainly is able to carry the COVID and it doesn't take them down. The people that we're talking about, the people we are discussing now, fall in that category. There are people who are below 18 years of age. Mm-hmm. So these are people who, just by observation, they are not the vulnerable. The vulnerable are the older people. Mm-hmm. Now, COVID-19 is not like HIV, where you say that the activities of the adults, as long as they are out there and they conduct their activity, if they choose to be reckless, as long as when they come home, they are not as reckless with their children, then the children are not likely to go and get the virus. It's not the same. Parents go out, parents are reckless, parents come back home, they expose their children to the virus. So, open up the economy, have the children at home. Parents who go out there and they behave as they're behaving, with caution being thrown to the wind, and then they come back home, the parents are the ones who have thrown caution to the wind, the parents have exposed their children to the COVID-19 virus.
So you're saying it's the parents who are the problem?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Children going to school, coming back home, may not be as the bigger exposure as allowing the parents to continue behaving the way they are behaving.
But it's already been proven that it is a risk and it is a threat. And I think just because it's not as risky as doesn't mean that you don't take that into consideration. Just because, okay, it won't be so bad, then that doesn't mean that you don't say that this is a stop-gap measure that you should use. It's risky. Like I keep saying, there's a reason why they were the first ones to be shut down. There's a reason. It didn't come just out of the blue. Okay, well, let me just close schools because it sounds like the first thing that I can do. No, there was a reason behind it. And we even heard from members of the Brain Trust, there was a reason why they said this majority of this population that was crisscrossing the country, let's get them back home. If it wasn't a danger, why didn't they say let them remain in school? It was clear that it was a danger.
At that point,
and these
everything was a danger.
And these countries that you're talking about where the elderly population are the ones who were more vulnerable, who were suffering, they've still shut down schools. Italy, Spain, France, the UK, Ireland. Why have they shut down school? Because they also realize that children could be super spreaders of this thing.
Yes.
By virtue of the fact that their activities are different from the older population.
But they don't just shut down schools, they shut down schools plus they shut down other aspects of the economy.
Exactly.
All right?
But what did they tell us also as we were opening up? It was
It
planned.
is not just because shut down schools, but everything else remains the same. It is claw back on the gains that you had made and shut down schools to reduce the number of the super spreaders. Now, in this particular case, if the argument was let's go back to starting the shutdowns, the lockdowns that we had earlier, then sour. But if you just say let the children go back to school, but the parents are still out there drinking, and the parents are still out there not wearing masks, going to the market, hugging one another in wherever they meet, they are behaving as if there is no COVID, what have we done? Of what effect is that? Don't just shut down schools. If you're talking about any measure that you want to take because of this rise in the number of cases, then
go back to shutting down the counties again and then
shutting
remove
down the counties again.
Shut down
or
the movement
come up
of
with
people.
a way of enforcing the regulations that you have in place.
Well, I think enforcement of regulation,
enforcement of people washing hands, ensure that there is proper enforcement of hand sanitization, ensure there is enforcement of people wearing masks. Focus there.
I think so. I think there should be an addition in addition to closing down the schools. I think that there's certain things that must be done, because if you've let people out, whereby the cry has been over and over again that we're not able to get in any kind of sustenance, we can't work, we can't operate in the service industry, this, that, the other thing. All right, then there should be enforcement of these measures to make sure that you're being safe. Because what has been the mantra coming out of the Ministry of Health for the last 11 days? We are crying because Kenyans have thrown the measures of containment and management of COVID-19 out the window. Nobody is focusing on this anymore. So you don't get tired. You reintroduce these measures and what they need to be. You send out the messaging. At the same time,
And
what
they
can
wonder
you do?
why.
You wonder why. You wonder why Kenyans are not listening to you.
Mhm.
All right. So then if you're going to do that, as well as close schools, again, because you're dealing with a vulnerable population, as you're enforcing on this side, you're also making sure that you're not throwing children into this petri dish of disaster whereby they could get infected at levels that you probably will not be able to contain or manage. What are the fears that are coming out from the Ministry of Health right now? That we think we may not be able to manage this thing if numbers continue to rise. Then you want to now add the possibility of children.
We were never able to manage
They were not even ready when they said that we were ready to open. When they said they were ready to open schools, talking about hand washing measures to be put in place, talking about sanitization, and then you have children being sprayed like cattle. They were not ready in the beginning.
The national government foresaw this and even took steps. That is the truth. If we're to speak fairly, they did. 5 billion shillings set aside.
They took steps to do.
They took steps to ensure that they gave money to the counties to help them in their preparedness for the rise in number of COVID cases. Now, the reason why there was this lull and people started back, there was a time the numbers, if you look at that graph that we have in the nation, clearly the numbers were rising. But people figured at some point, this thing is not alarming. So that preparedness that was paid for never happened as it was intended. So now, this spike we speak of is rapid, it's alarming, and it's now exposing all these counties who have been telling us they've been ready.
No,
Here we are. They're ready to be exposed. That readiness is not there. So
yeah, indeed, the national government took some steps. in my books, the national government was taking steps to pass over the responsibility and blame and everything else that comes with this management of COVID-19
surely.
You have given 5 billion shillings to the counties. How many months ago are they? So now you're done. So counties have gone, they have increased their capacity to
Did
get
they
the
say
beds.
they were done really?
Have they done anything since then? What have they done since then? What is it?
What
that
about the
was supposed to
testing
happen?
that they're doing? Where the testing is coming from?
The national government. Okay.
Precisely. So when you say they're doing nothing, surely they're not doing nothing, Eric.
They're not doing nothing, but what else is it that they're doing that then we can say, okay, so counties were allowed now to
Look,
they were
if counties
facilitated with 5 billion
do what they're
shillings.
supposed to do, the functions of the national government, believe me,
So
is then
counties were
reduced.
supposed to do what they were supposed to
Increase
do. Counties,
capacity.
They increase the capacity. Capacity is not just the bed. Capacity
No.
is also the ability to manage those people. Then the next thing that you do is you don't have money for 3 months to run your operations as a county government. Why? Because somewhere at the national level,
The
there's
Senate have decided.
some issue of being called a disagreement. After a disagreement, there's an issue of, I don't have the legal authority to pass on this money. So you have been given a bed, but you are incapacitated in how to basically
Dress it.
No,
Quote,
no,
unquote.
no, Eric. The
Right?
capacity was not to buy beds and just to build. They were specific. You could build. You have to buy beds. You have to buy
could borrow.
PPE. You're supposed to be prepared, fully prepared.
with 5 billion shillings. With how much was the highest county getting? 100 million shillings or something?
Eric, 100 million shillings is a lot of money.
Yeah. But then what does it do? So if you're talking about now building a capacity from zero,
If you start with the
from zero
capacity,
to,
okay.
from 0 to 1,000
All right.
beds.
Let's talk about just the rooms. Forget the beds for the time being. Let's talk about the rooms, the space that is required. Then go get onto the beds and get onto everything else.
Let me help you, CT. Nakuru County last week was looking for oxygen. As in we don't have supplies. We don't have. I had to look at how they could then connect with Nairobi in order to get an adequate supply. That's what we're talking about. In terms of your readiness, they were not ready. It couldn't have happened. One county, this is the problem that they're having, and this is because it has come to the fore. How many more? How many more? Stricken with this thing over the next couple of days, over the next couple of weeks, you're going to hear some horror stories, man. In terms of the readiness, it just was not there. Same thing with schools. When they were shouting here, from the Parents Association to the Private Schools Association to everybody who was shouting this hallelujah chorus of how we are ready, it was not the case. And this is what is going to happen. With the rising number of cases, you're going to see people are not ready to deal with this thing. So guess what? In fact, this is it. So that we save you the embarrassment of egg on your face. Let's even forget about the health of children. So that we save you the embarrassment of egg on your face, shut it down, let them go home. So that you can maybe, if you decide to pretend a little more that you're ready, let's give you some more time to do that. But don't do this death dalliance with children's lives. Don't do it. Let's allow you then to save yourself the embarrassment of actually when you said you were ready, but you actually were not ready.
Okay,
Let's
so let's
help
see
you.
what the comments are saying on social media. We can pretend that those children are adults. We cannot pretend that those children are adults and can take care of schools. Should be closed indefinitely and let learners go back. And this is a comment that's coming in. We are on our own. Let's do our personal responsibility. That you're talking to a government that is a constitutional change, on a constitutional change in the middle of a pandemic. That is Shurage Moai. Becky Kim says, I said it before, it was a social experiment. Schools shall not be shut down and there shall be no lockdown or other enforcement measure. Why? Because the economy is hurting and the government cannot feed her people. Meanwhile, BBI.
2 billion for BBI
2 billion
referendum.
for BBI and the referendum. Those are the comments that are coming in. And, Peter Mwangombe says, yes, agrees that the school should be shut down immediately because COVID is a killer. All right. So, coming to the end of the show, C.T. Muga, as you remind us today's proverb.
A fool has to say something. A wise person has something to say.
Mm-hmm. Why did you say that that proverb resonates with you today? Tell us the story.
You assume there's a story.
Tell us your
There's
story.
always a story.
Come on.
I'm just saying.
There's always a story.
Come on.
I link it to another saying where you say silence is the best answer for a fool.
Okay.
You don't always have to say something. Sometimes when you have something to say, you're actually the wise one. Fools just rap about, and there's even no tune.
Blah, 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 blah.
There's nothing that has come out.
Blah, blah, blah.
But he who would listen for a little while then usually comes up with these gems that can help everybody.
Okay. So let's observe what happens from the Ministry of Education, what they announce in coming days. Are they going to shut down schools? Are they going to observe what's happening in the rise of COVID-19 cases, or even at least address the fear that is then creeping among parents and learners? When you hear that teachers are testing positive, when you get to a point where students hear that their head teacher has passed on, that is big for especially that school community. Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room today. Join us again tomorrow, Wednesday, 28th day of October, right here. Between now and 3 o'clock, we have uninterrupted music, sugar and spice, and everything nice. And then Monique will be here to take you home from 3 to 7. And the adults in the room will be back from 7 to what time?
10.
10, yes. And the adults in the room are Barbara, Eric, and Emmanuel. They have some quite interesting conversations. Make sure that you join them. So, Eric Latif, Nduoko, and Siti Muga signing off. Have a lovely day. It's now 10 o'clock.